Chapter 1080. The workload for grade 2 classes started to become heavy. After the summer break, the school administration office held a meeting with all the teachers and proposed that the first task was to quickly get the students back to their senses a week before the start of the semester, so that they could return from their relaxed state of summer break to the atmosphere of sprinting for the college entrance exam. There were still 2 years between grade 1 and grade 3, and based on the frequency of updates and the number of chapters, there were still over 3,000 chapters before the author would write the college entrance exam plot. But even so, schoolwork was still the most important thing. The second half of the first year of high school was no longer that easy, because most schools would let the students finish the content of the second year of high school in the second half of the first year of high school. And in the second year of high school, they would let the students finish the homework of the third year. In grade 3, it was endless rehashing of cold rice. They had to do all the exercises over and over again. And as long as they didn't die from them, they would do it to death. This was grade 3. Apart from doing exercises, grade 3 students in cultivation schools also had to take cultivation exams, such as spirit sword control exams, magic treasure operation exams, elixir refining exams, talisman drawing exams, and so on. After Teacher Pan finished lecturing them that day, Little Peanut came out of the office with a stack of brochures and handed them out to everyone. "What's this?" someone asked. "Last year's Cultivation University enrollment brochures," Little Peanut replied. "Why are you distributing this?" "Old Pan said to show you the cutoff points for first-rate cultivation universities," Little Peanut said. Wang Ling flipped open the first page. A tightly packed form came into view. This was a form with the lowest cutoff points, and the number at the end corresponded to the page number of each school's enrollment brochure. Currently, the number 1 cultivation university was Jinghua 7-Star Academy, minimum cutoff point 209,300. Second was Jinghua Sword Immortal Academy, minimum cutoff point 199670. Third was Northern Swallow Lark Academy, minimum cutoff point 199,400. The top 3 were all at the minimum cutoff point of almost 200,000, which would make anyone's heart tremble. Wang Ling felt that if he didn't hold back his grades and performed normally, he could easily get into any of these 3 universities, but doing so would violate the Wang family's teachings. He didn't have the final say on what kind of university he would get into. In the end, it was up to Father and Mother Wang. Actually, Wang Ling didn't know what to do. In this dazzling array of cultivation academies, there were almost no universities that could truly teach him anything new. Wang Ling had once fantasized about university life. Like the college entrance examination, it was an important experience in life. Perhaps it was not necessary, but if he did not go, he might regret it for the rest of his life. On the side, Super Chun and a few others were looking at the admissions brochure and discussing it. Language, mathematics, physics, chemistry, arts, and sciences. These 7 subjects are worth 20,000 points each. The total score for the cultural subjects is 140,000 points. Talismans, swordsmanship, magic treasures, elixirs, cultivation history. These were collectively known as cultivation studies, and there were a total of 12 points. The full score adds up to 260,000. How many points do you think we can get now? Dopey stared at the recruitment brochure in his hand and could not help but sink into deep thought and worry. My current level is at most 150,000 points, which is just enough for 2 books. I still have to work harder. Super Chun sighed. In fact, at the beginning of the semester, Super Chun had already expressed his ambition, and his goal was to become a 7-star cultivator. However, he was still a full 50,000 points short of the target cutoff point. To make up for this gap, apart from scoring as many points as possible in the cultural subjects, he couldn't fall behind in any other aspect of cultivation studies. Of the 120,000 points in cultivation studies, he had to get the full 100,000 points. But how could 100,000 points be easy? Hey, I remember that there were bonus points in previous years. Yes, there are bonus points, but the conditions for bonus points are very harsh. Look at the back of this admissions brochure, said Little Peanut. Everyone flipped to the back, and sure enough, there were several clear explanations for the bonus points policy. First, Those who help the Cultivation Police or the Immortal Arts Mobile Squad maintain law and order during high school and receive an honorary cultivator medal will get bonus points. A third-class medal will get you 1,000 points, a second-class medal will get you 3,000 points, a first-class medal will get you 5,000 points, and a maximum of 5 medals can be stacked. I know the first one. Back then, it seems my dad relied on this to get 1,000 points, said Super Chun. What did your dad do? When he went to the market to buy groceries, he caught a fugitive in passing. Then he got a third-class medal. Super Chun laughed. But my dad was lucky. The fugitive was already exhausted from being chased and just happened to escape to the market. My dad was just lucky. Come on, let's not talk about your dad. Let's look at the next one. Dopig said. Second, those who receive a state-level special honorary certificate in high school will get bonus points. After passing the review, they will get 10,000 points. Everyone, next. Next, this is too difficult. Someone exclaimed in disbelief. Everyone had always thought that getting a special honorary certificate was enough. There was no way it would ever happen. The probability of getting a special honorary certificate was even lower than the probability of an online friend finding out that the person looked exactly like the person in the photo. Only Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan fell silent as they stared at this rule. To be honest, these two old people actually shouldn't have come to join in on the fun. But after all, they had come with the goal of learning from Wang Ling. Since Wang Ling was going to take the college entrance examination, they definitely couldn't avoid it. Given their strength, it wouldn't be difficult for them to get full marks. But the point was that they still wanted to go to the same university as Wang Ling. Thus, keeping their marks down was the problem they had to deal with now. The high school cultivation knowledge was too simple for the two of them. How about we just skip the exam and directly take the certificate as our marks? It seems like it'll be easier to keep our marks down. At that moment, Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan cupped their chins as they thought of the same idea. Finally, everyone turned their attention to the third point policy, which was also the last point of the entire policy. Third, those who break through to the foundation establishment stage in high school will get bonus points. Golden core stage, 10,000 points. Nascent soul stage cultivators don't need to take the college entrance examination and can freely choose their schools. They can directly enroll after being approved by the General Administration of 100 schools. Everyone, is there anyone who breaks through to the nascent soul stage in high school? Everyone stared at the form and looked at each other. Impossible. If there really was such a genius, why would they still be in high school? There are definitely people like that. It's just that our horizons are too narrow and we don't understand what it means to be a genius. At that moment, Super Chun suddenly said, Sometimes I've always suspected that there are people like that around us. They're clearly big shots, but they're quietly hiding in the crowd as ordinary people. Gu Xuanji, Wang Ling. Chapter 1081. Man is a very strange creature. When you were at school, you missed the holidays, and when you were on holiday, you often missed school. It was said that school was the most relaxing time because there wasn't so much social and life pressure, and you didn't have to rack your brains over getting married, buying a house, a car, and so on. Sometimes, it was only after you graduated from university and officially entered society and started working that you could recall your school days. Whether it was primary school, middle school, or high school, there were always some fragmented memories of good times. These memories would linger in your mind like old photos, and every time you felt irritable, they would flash through your mind and soothe your restless heart. An adult's downfall began with giving up on his figure, and a student's downfall began with giving up on learning. As Wang Ling had expected, Teacher Pan had been intensely preparing her package of mind control plans on the first day of school. At noon, Wang Ling, Hero Gua, Little Peanut, Lotus Sun, Super Chun, Gu Xuanji, and Jin Yuan were called to an empty classroom by Teacher Pan for a regular class committee meeting. Hero Gua was the political science representative, Super Chun was the physical education committee member, Lotus Sun was the class monitor, and Little Peanut was the commissary in charge of studies. As for the newcomers, Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan, it seemed that Teacher Pan was going to assign them new tasks because of their excellent academic performance. Wang Ling didn't know why he had to participate. He wasn't a class committee member, but since Teacher Pan had called him, he could only give her face and go. After all, he still had to stay in school. It wouldn't be good to offend the teacher in charge. I've called everyone here this time because I want to explain to you how things are going in class. Everyone present was a middle and upper class student, and they played the role of a leader. School has just started, and I know that everyone is probably still immersed in the atmosphere of the summer vacation. But I also want you to be clear that there are less than 800 days left until the college entrance examination. In the blink of an eye, you'll be sent to the front lines on the battlefield. Teacher Pan said passionately, her blood boiling. Everyone, the first thing is for the newcomers, Student Gu and Student Jun. The results of the two of them in the entrance test were quite good, given their specialties. I now appoint Student Gu as our class representative for Magic Treasures and Student Gu as our class representative for Swordsmanship. Of course, this is also in accordance with your wishes. I will fully respect your choice. Teacher Pan stared eagerly at the two of them. Very well, teacher. Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan nodded. Since he had already put it this way, they naturally had no reason to refuse. The truth was that Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan had already tested Teacher Pan as early as the entrance test. They couldn't understand why a big shot like Wang Ling would deign to study under a golden core cultivator like Teacher Pan. There had to be something special about her. They hadn't noticed it before. But now, it seemed that Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan could tell. Although this Teacher Pan's realm was far below theirs, she had an exceptionally accurate eye for people. The two of them could be considered quite versatile. One was the keeper of cosmic order, while the other was a legend in the cultivation world on Earth. There was almost nothing they did not know about cultivation. But among the various proficiency skills, there were also specialties. Swordsmanship and Dharma treasures were indeed their specialties. This homeroom teacher was indeed not simple to be able to see through their specialties with just an entrance test. At this moment, the two bosses were deep in thought. Wang Ling, let me talk about the second thing. It's this semester's PE class. When Teacher Pan said this, everyone suddenly had a bad feeling. It's like this, class committee members. There are 22 weeks in this semester, and there are 3 PE classes a week, which means that there are 66 PE classes in total. But before the start of the semester, I had a serious discussion with the other teachers, and we felt that 66 PE classes were a little too much. So we've already talked to the PE teacher about dividing 33 of these 66 PE classes, which will be evenly distributed to the other teachers to use. The second semester of senior high school is starting to get intense. As the top students in the class, I believe that all the class committee members present don't have any objections, right? Super Chun, you're the PE committee member, so say what you think. If you have any objections, feel free to speak up boldly. But this year's recommendation for District 3 merit students. Super Chun immediately raised his hand. Teacher Pan, I have no objections. Everyone, you really don't? You can speak up if you have any. I'm still very open and democratic. Really, as the teacher's intimate little cotton-padded jacket, we as class committee members help share the teacher's burdens. We become an important engine for the class's cohesion. Super Chin continued. Very good. Teacher Pan nodded with a meaningful look in her eyes. Below the stage, everyone secretly gave Super Chin the middle finger. They despised him. Then we've already come to an agreement on the above 2 matters. If other students in the class ask, I can only answer that this is the result of a thorough discussion among the class committee members. Teacher Pan gave a devilish smile, and everyone's hearts trembled when they saw this. Whether it was the result of a discussion or not was actually obvious, but the role of the class committee, there was nothing they could do about it. They were there to take the blame. Whether it was Super Chun, Hirogwa, Lotus Sun, or Little Peanut, all of them now regretted standing up for the class committee back then. It was a waste of effort, and if they were even the slightest bit careless, they would be talked about by the other students. Next is the third matter, which is also the most important. Saying this, Teacher Pan looked around at everyone. The parent-teacher conference should have been held in the middle of the semester, but given the tight schoolwork, Headmaster Chun has decided to bring it forward. It'll be held this week. On one hand, It'll let the parents quickly understand how the mock test went, and on the other hand, it'll ease the student's stress in the future. This time, our parent-teacher conference will mainly discuss 2 points. The first is one-on-one service. In the future, we'll set up 2-person study groups in our class, with students with good grades leading students with average or lower grades. Speaking up to this point, Teacher Pan paused and finally focused her gaze on Wang Ling, student Wang Ling. Do you now know why I called you out alone? Of course, Wang Ling knew why. Because in the past 6 months, he had perfectly suppressed the average score of the class. But Wang Ling had overlooked one thing. Although his grades were above average, they were too stable. And it was precisely because of this stability that Teacher Pan felt that Wang Ling was a model. Perhaps she could start with Wang Ling and set up a model of one-on-one study groups. Chapter 1082. Wang Ling hadn't expected that his overly stable grades would instead attract Teacher Pan's attention. He had thought that with his average grades, he would be invisible in class, and had never expected that in the end, Teacher Pan would still set her sights on him. As a pioneer teacher at number 60 high school, Teacher Pan had guided countless students to get into key universities. Based on her intuition, she naturally felt that Wang Ling was a very malleable student. In a sense, Teacher Pan even thought that Wang Ling was a talent. Since he was a talent, there was a lot of room for improvement. But in previous years, the one-on-one study groups had usually been opposed by some parents and students. There were many reasons why parents objected. Sometimes the one-on-one groups consisted of a boy and a girl, and there were times when feelings would be affected in the process. It wasn't a good idea to fall in love at this juncture. The reason why students objected was that one-on-one groups delayed the end of school and also expended a lot of energy in addition to studying. Why couldn't they use this one-on-one time on something they were interested in? So after full consideration, Teacher Pan decided to start with Wang Ling as a pilot, and if the effect was good, she would slowly spread it out. She even thought that a one-on-one rotation system could be implemented. For example, if Student A helped Student B improve his grades, then Student A's one-on-one task would end, and it would be Student B's turn to tutor Student C. In this way, not only would the students learn something, but they would also consolidate what they had learned in the process of helping others. So, here was the problem. Who should guide him in his studies? Is there anyone present who is willing to tutor Student Wang Ling? Zhen Yuan and Gu Xuanji fell silent again. Tutor? What could they tutor Wang Ling for? Wasn't that like teaching a teacher a lesson? Seeing that no one answered, Teacher Pan swept her gaze over the class committee members present. All of them had above average grades, and the 2 with the best grades were naturally the 2 new students. But considering that these 2 new students had just arrived at the school, Teacher Pan felt that directly asking them to help Wang Ling would make number 60 high school's original academic standards seem inadequate. Furthermore, looking at the conflicted expressions on their faces, it seemed that they weren't willing to tutor Wang Ling. Thus, after comprehensive consideration, Teacher Pan made her final decision. Classmate Lotus Sun, I'll leave classmate Wang Ling to you. Is that okay? As soon as Teacher Pan said this, everyone's gazes were instantly shaken. The class committee members first looked at the flushed Lotus Sun and then at the expressionless Wang Ling, their hearts filled with complicated emotions. After the end of the Spirit Sword exchange meet, all the rumors about this pair had died down. Now that Teacher Pan had put them together again, it actually felt like a lifetime had passed. There was naturally a reason why Teacher Pan had put them together like this. There had indeed been rumors in school that Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were dating and that they liked each other. But the problem was that this news had been buried. In the end, Teacher Pan found out that it was all because Wang Ling was too cold and kept girls at a distance. Being cold is good. When it comes to relationships, as long as one side is cold, it will never happen. Thus, Teacher Pan thought that there was absolutely nothing wrong with this combination. Wang Ling. Of course, there was something wrong with him. Not long after the class committee meeting ended, the whole class knew about the one-on-one study group. Of course, apart from this matter, the 33 PE classes that had been taken away had also become a hot topic of discussion. Why didn't you fight for it? Someone complained. It's not like you don't know Old Pan's personality. What's the use of fighting for it? Superchin shrugged helplessly. His position as a PE committee member had already been useless for more than a day or two. There were said to be 33 classes, but in fact, there weren't any. The remaining 33 classes might be snatched away for all sorts of mysterious reasons when the PE teacher went out to do research or when the group fell ill. It would already be a miracle if there were 20 PE classes this semester. If this was already the case in the second semester of Senior Grade 1, everyone couldn't help worrying about their lives in Senior Grade 2 and 3. Everyone clearly felt the pressure. When it really was Senior Grade 3, there was probably no need to think about PE classes anymore. Usually, the school would gather the students together for a burst of training before the PE exams. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun each had their own plans for the two people whom Teacher Pan had successfully pulled strings for them. Emotionally, Lotus Sun knew that she had really hit an iron plate this time. In the first half of the semester, she had racked her brains to think of ways to attract Wang Ling's attention. But in the end, Wang Ling still looked out the window expressionlessly with his head tilted to one side during class. She had thought that their relationship would take a step forward after the Spirit Sword exchange meet, but she hadn't expected Wang Ling to really have no plans to fall in love. Lotus Sun naturally understood that a forced melon wouldn't be sweet. But no matter what, this one-on-one study group this time was a very rare opportunity. Lotus Sun felt that it was time to say those words that she had kept bottled up in her heart for a long time, no matter what the outcome was. On the other side, Wang Ling was also deep in thought at that moment. It was time for school to end, and everyone in the classroom had already left. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were facing each other at a desk. Lotus Sun was flipping through all of Wang Ling's mistakes and test papers. After all, her main task was to help Wang Ling study, and improving his grades was number one. As for personal matters, there was still time to talk about them after tutoring. Lotus Sun examined each mistake very seriously and was greatly shocked by the results. Classmate Wang Ling, how can your mistakes be so evenly distributed? Lotus Sun examined Wang Ling's test papers from beginning to end and found that it made a lot of small mistakes in the details. For example, he didn't write in units, deliberately left out a certain symbol, or got the answer wrong at the last step of disassembly. Furthermore, the answer was very close to the correct value. Actually, these were all Wang Ling's usual methods to keep his marks down. If he didn't write in units, he could guarantee that at least 10 marks will be deducted from his paper. Sometimes, if his handwriting was deliberately sloppy, around 5 marks might be deducted. Wang Ling didn't feel the slightest heartache about these marks. In any case, to Wang Ling, units of measurement and whatnot were just tools he used to keep his marks down. Lotus Sun then copied down a few exercise questions in her workbook. She didn't copy the exercise questions, but changed the values of several variables. Finally, she pushed the exercise questions back in front of Wang Ling. Classmate Wang Ling, these are the questions you got wrong. Can you do them again? Wang Ling stared at the workbook in silence. Chapter 1083. Of course, Wang Ling knew how to do all of these questions, but now the question he had to think about was how to get them right without seeming out of place. So, should he follow the procedure, or just say he didn't know how to do them? Wang Ling was thinking. Staring at Wang Ling's nervous expression, Lotus Sun was even more puzzled. It was just one wrong question. Did he have to be so nervous? She couldn't tell that Wang Ling's mental fortitude wasn't very good, which was a big taboo in an exam. When faced with a wrong question they had made in the past, some people would often become very suspicious and would always suspect that they had miscalculated, so they would repeatedly change their answers. In the end, it was also possible to calculate the correct answer incorrectly. Classmate Wang Ling, take a deep breath. Don't be so nervous. If you're careful, you can definitely do it. Lotus Sun encouraged Wang Ling. Not all boys receive this kind of treatment. Sure enough, after Lotus Sun's encouragement, Wang Ling could already hear the commotion around him. It looked like he and Lotus Sun were the only two people in the classroom, but that wasn't the case. Countless pairs of eyes and ears were staring at them from all around the classroom, or even above it. This was the real reason why Wang Ling was in such a predicament. It actually wasn't that scary to tutor them face to face. The scariest thing was that Lotus Sun's innate attraction to the opposite sex would draw their hatred toward Wang Ling. While Lotus Sun was encouraging him, the boys who had been watching them couldn't sit still. They were so envious that they were about to go out of shape. More than 10 boys were lying on the floor of the teacher's room upstairs, using the ground listening spell to listen in on the tutoring session. After hearing Lotus Sun's sweet voice, one of them angrily pounded the floor, and it immediately cracked open. "What's that sound?" Lotus Sun raised her head suspiciously and looked upstairs. There was an empty room upstairs, so there shouldn't be anyone there. Could it be her bodyguard? Ever since the Shadow Stream incident, Lotus Sun's bodyguards have been following her like a shadow, and it wasn't unusual for them to inadvertently cause a commotion. Forget it, tutoring classmate Wang Ling was more important. Lotus Sun's mind was full of questions, but in the end, she focused her attention on Wang Ling again. After waiting for a few minutes, and seeing that Wang Ling still hadn't moved, Lotus Sun exhaled slightly. She closed the exercise book and put it aside, then took out a test paper full of multiple-choice questions. "Student Wang Ling, how about this? These variable manipulation problems could be put aside for now. You're too nervous. You'll make mistakes easily. Why don't we do a few multiple-choice questions first to relax?" Lotus Sun's voice was soft and incomparably gentle, and the boys lying on the floor upstairs all felt their hearts itch. As a result, the boys became unhappy as they listened. This brat is really still pretending to be obedient after getting a bargain. Even when my goddess talks to him, he won't listen to her. Yeah. If only Lotus Sun would take the initiative to talk to me. A few boys who were lying on the ground revealed looks of envy, but soon they noticed that something was wrong with the atmosphere. Adolescent boys and girls were always sensitive to the sour smell of love. Furthermore, there were rumors that Lotus Sun and this classmate Wang Ling had gone out on a date long before this. Now that they were having one-on-one tutoring session, all kinds of thoughts naturally popped up in everyone's minds. This Wang Ling went on a date with Lotus Sun before. Do you think he's not saying anything now because he's thinking about how to confess? Confess. The boys thought about it and felt that something wasn't right. They looked nervous and broke out in a few beads of cold sweat. Indeed, if a boy didn't say anything for a long time, it was indeed suspicious that he was thinking about how to confess. These boys were all from other classes and actually didn't know much about Wang Ling's personality. Furthermore, when they had heard the news that Lotus Sun and Wang Ling had gone out on a date, they had all been convinced that it was Wang Ling who had pestered Lotus Sun to go out on a date. Classmate Lotus Sun hadn't been able to refuse him. Who would have thought that this brother would be so scheming? The boys were horrified as they tried to think of a possibility. Then, was it possible that this classmate Wang Ling hadn't been able to find a chance to confess when they had gone out on a date, so he had deliberately done badly in his senior high school entrance exam last semester so that Lotus Sun could tutor him? How could he? What a great plan. The boys lying on the floor silently clenched their fists. On the other side, in order to ease the tense atmosphere, Lotus Sun gave Wang Ling some multiple-choice questions that he had gotten wrong before. Wang Ling naturally knew the correct answers to these questions. It was just that he had chosen AC in the exam. Relying on multiple-choice questions to control his scores was also a common tactic. Furthermore, Wang Ling liked to do multiple-choice questions the most, because the rule was that he would only get points if he got all of them right, and he wouldn't get any points if he got them wrong. In this way, Wang Ling didn't get them wrong so deliberately. He could choose a correct answer and a wrong answer on the multiple-choice questions to deliberately get them wrong. And now, the first question Wang Ling was faced with was a multiple-choice question. Multiple-choice question. The question was as follows. A male and female cultivator are known to have entered the cosmic cave. The female cultivator was injured in a battle, and the male cultivator, after examining her injuries, determined that there were 2 wounds on the female cultivator's body. One was caused by an iron-eating beast, and the other was caused by an unknown thorn that had passed by. Both wounds were highly toxic, but the female cultivator didn't directly die. In this case, how should this kind of injury be treated? A. Help the female cultivator suck out the toxins from her wounds and apply medicine to bandage them. B. Use the blood guide spell to expel the poisonous blood, and use the blood-making spell to create new, uncontaminated blood in the body. C. Use a purifying magic artifact to purify the blood. D. Perform dual cultivation with the female cultivator and expel the toxins from the sweat glands through dual cultivation. This question looked very complicated, but was actually very simple. Looking at the question, Wang Ling actually already had an idea in mind. The biggest reason why the female cultivator hadn't directly died in the presence of two highly toxic poisons was that she was fighting poison with poison. The toxins of the thorns and the iron-eating beast were both highly toxic, but they restrained each other so they could coexist peacefully in the body. But if the wounds weren't treated, she might not die, but the spirituality of her spirit root would be contaminated, and her cultivation would be greatly damaged. Option A seemed fine, but it was in fact a fatal operation because the wounds were in two different places. Sucking out one of the toxins would instead cause the other to take over and ultimately cause the toxins to become unbalanced in the body. It was directly eliminated. As for the second wrong option, it was option B. The blood guide spell and the blood-making spell were feasible, but they could only be used when the poisons were mild. They weren't suitable for highly toxic poisons. Because these two spells took a long time to cast, it would be difficult to complete them with only the male cultivator's assistance. It would be best if there were two people, one to draw the blood and the other to make the blood. This was the most efficient and suitable method. After sending out option A and option B, the only answers left were C and D. Many students would often choose this option straight away after seeing it, which was precisely the trap of this multiple-choice question. Multiple-choice questions could have multiple answers at the same time, but they could also have only one answer. And in this question, option C, which met all the conditions, was also wrong. A purifying magic artifact could indeed treat highly toxic poisons, but the enemy this pair of cultivators were facing was an iron-eating beast, which specialized in devouring magic artifacts. Thus, it was very likely that the magic artifacts the cultivators were carrying were already damaged. So option C didn't work at all. In the end, Wang Ling could only look at option D. Dual cultivation, Wang Ling murmured. Lotus Sun immediately nodded and was just about to congratulate Wang Ling for getting it right, when in a split second, there was a sudden rumble from upstairs. Who wants to dual cultivate with classmate Lotus Sun? Wang Ling, you old thief, come out and die. Several boys from other classes smashed the floor together and fell from the sky. Chapter 1084. Of course, Wang Ling could deliberately choose the wrong answer, but he knew that once he chose the right answer, this bunch of brothers in the ceiling wouldn't be able to resist rushing out. Thus, as the ceiling caved in, the one-on-one tutoring activity came to an end just as it had begun. After that, bodyguard from Huawa Water Curtain Group rushed in with old Li and a group of school guards. The commotion was so loud that the school guards and bodyguards thought there had been an explosion in the classroom, and they instantly panicked. Armed with explosion-proof magic treasures, they poured into the classroom, which instantly became overcrowded. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were squeezed in the middle of the crowd and couldn't move at all. When the scene calmed down again, it was already more than 10 minutes later. Inside the school, Old Antique was still marking exam papers on the night shift. He severely criticized several boys for destroying the school's public facilities. Nonsense! Old Antique stared at these boys from other classes. They were a group of Senior 3 students and were Wang Ling and Lotus Sun seniors, so their spells were more pure and destructive. Although number 60 high school wasn't a key city high school yet, the quality of its students was indeed getting better with each batch. Old Antique knew some of these people, and one of them was even a cadre of the student union. But now that they had made a mistake, Old Antique naturally treated them equally and wouldn't be careless. When a cadre made a mistake, the punishment they would receive would often be heavier. Old Antique looked around at them and deliberately lowered his voice. To be honest, he wasn't used to being the bad guy. Do you know how dangerous this is? You're not allowed to use magic in the teaching building without the guidance of a teacher. Isn't this written in the high school student handbook? When you first entered the school, didn't you have to carry it? The teaching building had been built with special materials and wasn't made of jerry-built materials. Logically speaking, it was impossible to damage the walls and floors of the teaching building without using magic. Thus, Old Antique could tell that these boys had most likely used some kind of trick. A boy stepped forward. "Teacher Yang, I was just accumulating power." "So what if you're accumulating power?" "The power accumulation spell is also a spell." Old Antique glared at this unreasonable student. "You, 5,000 words of self-reflection. Give it to me tomorrow." This boy felt a little aggrieved. "Then if we can't accumulate power, can student Wang Ling and student Lotus Sun do double cultivation?" "You, 10,000 words of self-reflection." The corners of Old Antique's mouth twitched as he looked at this student. "Why?" The second boy was unconvinced. "Because of your impure nature." They are obviously having an academic discussion. Old Antique showed the boys the multiple-choice question which Wang Ling had just done, and they all lowered their heads. They had no choice but to take the blame. Indeed, they were the ones who were defiled. Now, they're in the first year of high school, so it's normal for them to interact with each other during tutoring sessions after school. Moreover, the few of you are already in the third year of high school, so you should focus on your studies. Looking at the boys, Old Antique said earnestly, "As students, you should be clear about your place. The high school students, I don't care if you're in the wrong or not. In any case, you're in the wrong now. Since you're in the wrong, you have to change. How you want to return it, that's your problem. I have to find a reason myself." Under the bombardment of Ming Shui's grimoire, the boys finally surrendered. "That's enough, teacher. We were wrong. We shouldn't have left school and stayed upstairs to eavesdrop. Your attitude can be considered sincere." Old Antique nodded. "What spells did you use upstairs just now?" "Only the ground listening spell and the power accumulation spell." "Then what level are you at with these two spells?" "These are compulsory spells, so we usually practice them together, and we've already mastered them. Each of us has reached level 6. "Oh, these two spells consume a lot of energy. Don't you feel tired?" "We're not tired. Teacher, we've made you worry. Our primary task in high school is to improve our endurance with each spell so that we don't have enough spirit energy or we can't clone ourselves during exams, resulting in a failure to cast a spell." The leader of the high school students replied respectfully in a low and modest tone. He had thought that by doing this, he would be able to move Old Antique in front of him and avoid some punishment. But Old Antique wouldn't fall for this trick. Eavesdropping was a small matter, but disrupting school official business was a crime. Even if he didn't have to be punished, he definitely had to write a self-reflection. "Oh, if you're not tired, then the self-reflection will be 20,000 words each. Leave it to me tomorrow morning." On the other side, Wang Ling was finally able to escape because the classroom ceiling had collapsed. In a situation like this, a lot of people would think that they didn't have to go to school tomorrow, but the truth was that this was very silly and naive. The teaching building was made of very special restorative clay, and with the help of a spell, the collapsed ceiling would be restored to its original state. It was just that it would be a little more troublesome to clean up the classroom, which was naturally done by the high school students who had broken the rules. At that moment, Wang Ling walked toward the school gate with his hands in his pockets. Lotus Sun followed him. She had something she wanted to say, but was hesitating. Now that there was no one at the school gate, she thought this might be a good opportunity. "Classmate Wang Ling." Finally, she opened her mouth. Up ahead, Wang Ling stopped and turned his head slightly to look at her with his hands in his pockets. The girl's face was red, as if she was holding back her strength. The words were clearly on the tip of her tongue, but she didn't have the courage to say them. Because of her personality, she had been pampered at home since she was a child, and had calmly rejected countless suitors. She had never thought about how she would feel when it was her turn to be rejected one day? Would she feel lost? Or would she sink into complete despair? Maybe both. Because of this, the girl felt like she had fallen into a whirlpool of youth. She didn't know if this was love, but she was sure that this might be what it felt like to like someone. Lotus Sun, you can do it. You have to say it. Say it out loud. Tell all your feelings to the youth in front of you. Classmate Wang Ling. Finally summoning up her courage, the girl spoke again. Wang Ling, I also think crispy noodle snacks are very delicious. Wang Ling nodded and breathed a long sigh of relief in his heart. He then walked home without looking back. At that moment, Lotus Sun's heart was on the verge of collapse. The girl threw her handbag to the ground with a P.S. sound. Why was what she thought and what she said completely different? What a fraud. Chapter 1085. According to a general survey in Huaxiao Nation, the number of single cultivators in Huaxiao was increasing year by year. Currently, there were already more than 1 billion singles in the country. This was just the statistics for Huaxiao Nation. If you looked at the whole world, the number of singles would probably be even more exaggerated. If you look deeper into it, there are all sorts of reasons why cultivators were single. According to the results of the poll, the top 3 reasons for being single were: 1. Being addicted to being single. 2. Not willing to make do with it. 3. Realms and strength don't match, so they can't be well matched. The first reason, which was also the one with the most votes, was actually very easy to explain. Being addicted to being single. After a person had been single for a long time, they would indeed get used to being single and thus develop a psychological aversion to being in love. This was a psychological factor, especially when people got older and past the period of puberty where it was easy to be restless. There would be even less love stories where blood was shed in the heat of the moment. People who grew up, because of the factors of the social environment, would often think more complicated than they did in their youth. Even if they were in a relationship, many factors would be taken into consideration. So rather than being complicated, it was better not to fall in love. After falling in love, expenses would increase, and your freedom to live would be compressed to a certain extent, as you would have to share everything with your other half. People who weren't used to these troubles would rather be single. Over time, they would realize that being single really was pretty good. Especially those who had failed relationships before, they felt that being single was very comfortable. The second reason was that they didn't want to make do with it. This reason was actually very easy to understand. After all, as long as cultivators were willing to maintain their figure and appearance, they could maintain their youthful appearance forever. Female cultivators didn't have to worry about their appearance gradually aging as they aged, so of course they were more eager to find their Mr. Right. It was the same for male cultivators. They felt that they could wait for something better and believe that they could find their fated one, so they didn't want to find someone to make do with it. Thus, whether it was male or female cultivators, they would just waste their time like this. As a result, time would drag on longer and longer, and in the end, they would become addicted to being single. As for the third reason, it was actually very easy to understand. Being well-matched had always been a concept since ancient times. However, in the cultivation world, this well-matched match did not simply refer to material equality. The matching of realms was also very important. According to the marriage law of the cultivation world, when cultivators get married, the gap between their cultivation realms cannot exceed 2 realms. For example, if a gold core stage cultivator wanted to fall in love, he couldn't look for a body refining stage cultivator or a cultivator above the soul formation stage. That was because it was easy for things to go wrong in a relationship when there was a huge gap between their realms. For cultivators, age was no longer a problem in a relationship. Even if they were a few hundred years apart, as long as they liked each other, it was acceptable. But one's realm had to conform to the rules. Over the years, accidents had happened to the cultivators who fell in love across multiple levels because they didn't listen to the advice. For example, Kiss of Death. There was once a case where a soul formation stage cultivator fell in love with a body refinement stage cultivator, but because the difference in their realms was too great, when the two kissed, the soul formation stage cultivator sucked out the body refinement stage cultivator's tongue. In short, there are many reasons for being single. On the way home this time, Wang Ling's mood was a little more complicated. Looking up information on the singles census on his phone, he seemed to be deep in thought. Because of himself, Wang Ling believed that he had been a very sensitive person since he was young. It was also because of this that he naturally understood Lotus Sun's feelings. Unfortunately, according to the current marriage law of the cultivation world, his right to fall in love had already been taken away. So instead of thinking about these impossible things, Wang Ling felt that he might as well focus on the present, study hard, and work hard to find a way to completely control his strength. Flowers may bloom again, but people will never be young again. In fact, Wang Ling had long anticipated that a lot of people would definitely confess to him during his adolescence. Thus, as early as when he was in junior high, he had written a spell called Singles Curse and cast it on himself. Note, this spell is ineffective on married people. The specific manifestation of this spell was very simple. If you ran into someone who suddenly wanted to confess to you, the person's words would have nothing to do with your inner feelings. But because Wang Ling had written this spell casually in junior high, it wasn't like it didn't have any bugs. But because it was a passive spell, once it was cast, Wang Ling would only be able to determine where the bug was when the spell's effects were released. It was like an electronic program. Programmers had to constantly test and discover the bugs in the program they had written, and then fix them bit by bit. Wang Ling could only use other people's confessions to him since junior high to trigger the effects of Singles Curse, and then fill in the holes in the spell bit by bit. Wang Ling calculated that since the development of Singles Curse, there had been no less than 20 people who had tried to confess to him since junior high, and he had repeatedly fixed the spell 20 times. The large holes had basically been filled in, and there might still be some small, harmless problems. Lotus Sun's attempt to confess to him just now had triggered the effects of Singles Curse for the 21st time. Sitting on the spirit bus on the way home, Wang Ling sighed. It looked like he would have to keep an eye on Lotus Sun's reaction tomorrow. He had already fixed Singles Curse 20 times, so there shouldn't be any major problems. Wang Ling remembered that when this Singles Curse had first been developed, there had been a huge loophole, so when it was triggered, a temporary curse would be planted in the confessor's body. In the end, it would become a contagious curse spell. Furthermore, the method of infection was very simple. As long as there was skin contact, you would be infected by Singles Curse. In the end, before Wang Ling graduated, this spell directly led to the extremely excellent atmosphere in his junior high. Not a single person in the entire junior high department was in a relationship, and everyone was studying tirelessly. In the end, even the young teachers in the school stopped dating and were all engrossed in their teaching careers. The junior high, which Wang Ling had chosen, was actually very ordinary, and the reason he had chosen number 60 high was the same. The biggest goal was to keep a low profile, and it was precisely because of Wang Ling's Singles Curse that everyone became obsessed with studying. Their junior high's ranking in the entire city directly soared from the bottom to the top 3 in the city. By the time Wang Ling graduated from junior high, his original high school had already been promoted to a key city junior high. Chapter 1086. This was bound to be a sleepless night. Every time the passive effect of Singles Curse was triggered, Wang Ling was always worried the new bug would pop up. On the other side, Lotus Sun, who was lying on her 50-meter-long bed, was also lost in deep thought. She regretted her confession today. She had clearly mustered up the courage to say it, but when the words left her mouth, they turned into something else. It was a good thing there was no one around, otherwise it would have been too embarrassing. Lotus Sun buried her head in the pillow and slapped the bed with her slender legs. It was November 5th, the second day of school at number 60 high. The news that several senior 3 students had disrupted the one-on-one tutoring group and pierced a hole in the classroom's ceiling had spread through the class. Although the ceiling had already been repaired overnight, many people still praised this incident from the bottom of their hearts. Well done, Wang Ling. As it turned out, tutoring with Lotus Sun was still too much of a nuisance. But Old Pan's plan clearly wouldn't stop here. He wondered if he should raise his scores a little in the next mock exam, so that his scores wouldn't be lower than the average, and he could get an above-average score. This way, the one-on-one tutoring group plan would continue, and Wang Ling would be able to get rid of the distress of having to stay at school for tutoring earlier and give this glorious and great learning opportunity to the next unlucky person. In the morning, it was old antiques theory of history class. After a summer break, the students still missed him a little. When a familiar figure stepped into the classroom, everyone's eyes began to stare fixedly at Old Antique. Why do I feel like Old Antique has lost some weight? The students in the classroom silently observed Old Antique's rotund figure. After the summer break, they were surprised to find that Old Antique seemed to have lost a lot of weight. I heard that Old Antique went to volunteer teaching during the summer break. Someone in the know finally said. Volunteer teaching? I heard it's a very poor place. Every year, our city organizes teachers to volunteer there. This year, it's our number 60 high and several other high schools in Peiyuan district who send teachers there. Old Antique is one of them, and he's been teaching there for half a month. This student said, in addition to the teaching mission, the school has also raised money to buy teaching supplies, such as textbooks and teaching spirit swords. These things can't be found in rural areas. When this student said this, everyone couldn't help sighing in their hearts. Huaxiao Nation could already be considered a prosperous and powerful nation since its founding, but some poor areas were inherently disadvantaged due to their geographical location, which directly led to unbalanced regional development. Although the motherland was prosperous, they had to admit that there was still a gap between the rich and the poor. Students, Old Antique stood on the dais. After returning from his teaching experience this time, his heart was filled with emotion. Half a month of volunteer teaching was very short, but it was enough for Old Antique to have a deep understanding of the poverty and hardships of a foreign village. I'm sure everyone already knows that half a month ago, my teacher went to Shihai Village in Shihai County for a half-month volunteer teaching mission. The Alliance of 10,000 Schools initiated this volunteer teaching activity many years ago, and it's not just for winter and summer vacations. Every day, in every prosperous big city, schools would organize teachers to take turns teaching activities. The mobile volunteer teaching activity has greatly improved the teaching of cultivation in the poor areas of our country. At the same time, it has also provided great help to the children in those poor areas. It must be very hard, teacher, right? I'd be lying if I said it wasn't hard. Old Antique smiled bitterly. The terrain in those places is harsh, so the teachers who carry out the volunteer teaching activities have to be at least at the golden core stage on average. Otherwise, it'll be very dangerous. Because of the strong acid in the underground spirit vein, the residents in these areas have no choice but to endure such a harsh environment. Can't they move to a big city? Super Chin asked. They've lived here for generations, and their physiques have changed because of the environment, so those places aren't suitable for outsiders to live in. Furthermore, they can't move elsewhere. That's because it's very easy for them to not acclimatize to the environment. If they carry out volunteer teaching activities in such a dangerous place for a long time, it will have a huge impact on the teachers' bodies, which is why the volunteer teaching activities were carried out. Old Antique said, the special geographical environment makes it impossible for the local residents to smoothly develop in other places, and for people from outside the city to settle in and trade with them. In the long run, the area's economy will fall behind. And there are many other places with such a harsh environment like West Sea Village. But because the underground spirit vein can't be completely changed, our country can only intervene in other ways to stimulate the economic development of poor areas. For example, we can fire spirit power missiles into the sky that can suppress the strong acid in order to maintain a stable climate for a period of time. Another example is to take advantage of the special attribute of the underground spirit vein and use its corrosive power as an energy source. In the West Sea Village that teacher went to this time, the villagers are very good at decomposing garbage. They all have a trash can at home that goes straight to the ground, and when all their daily waste is thrown into it, it will immediately be decomposed by the strong acid in the spirit vein. In some sense, this is also a way to protect the environment. Teacher, it's been hard on you. You've lost weight. At that moment, someone finally brought up the main point. Actually, the main reason I've lost weight isn't because of the volunteer teaching activities. It's because there's no snack bar in that place. I finished all the spicy strips I brought on the first day. It wasn't enough at all. Old Antique cried like a storm. Everyone in the theory of history class this time, Old Antique used volunteer teaching as the topic to bring up a very key test point: underground spirit veins. Underground spirit veins were special energy bodies hidden deep underground. They weren't tangible, but were entrenched in one place like roaming dragons. When cultivators went into seclusion, they would often choose the most suitable geomantic location for their seclusion, and many cultivators would also rely on calculating the location of underground spirit veins to choose the specific location for their seclusion. There were big and small spirit veins, and they all had different attributes. The energy contained in the underground spirit veins under a big city was undoubtedly enormous. This was especially true for the spirit vein under the capital, Jinghua City. After class, Old Antique gave everyone a handout which listed the locations in which various underground spirit veins had appeared in historical periods. These are all mandatory test points for the next monthly test. During the test, 10 spirit veins would be randomly selected from over 100 pieces of information. Everyone had to answer the historical period in which the spirit vein had appeared, as well as its attribute, to be considered a success. After helping Old Antique hand out the handout in form, Lotus Sun couldn't help looking in Wang Ling's direction. Yesterday's confession had actually been a little awkward. She didn't know what Wang Ling was thinking and had planned to sneak a peek at him. She hadn't expected that as soon as she looked over, she would actually find that Wang Ling was also looking at her. Chapter 1087. Sensing Lotus Sun's gaze on him, Wang Ling quickly averted his eyes and pretended to look out the window casually. In any case, he had indeed been careless just now and hadn't been completely on guard against Lotus Sun's gaze. Wang Ling had indeed been secretly observing Lotus Sunday. Of course, he wasn't looking at her face, but observing her reaction. Once Single's curse was triggered, it would last for a full 3 days before disappearing. That was to say, if there was a bug in the spell, it would manifest itself during these 3 days. Hence, Wang Ling was both curious and worried about the bug that could appear on Lotus Sun at any time. Wang Ling spent the entire morning feeling apprehensive. Fortunately, nothing had happened for now, and there was no reaction from Lotus Sunday. Wang Ling heaved a sigh of relief. Maybe it was because the bug in Single's curse had been completely fixed. After all, it had already been modified almost 20 times, and Wang Ling felt that there shouldn't be any more mistakes. He was probably just too nervous. After the list of spirit veins was distributed in the theory of history class in the morning, Teacher Pan unexpectedly brought up the matter of spirit veins in Old Pan's Tao Talismans class in the afternoon. Everyone instantly tensed up. It was obvious that knowledge about spirit veins would probably be the focus of the assessment for the next month. Since the beginning of the Spirit Qi era, more and more underground spirit veins have been discovered by cultivators in various countries. They could be divided into 5 levels, and the 5th and highest level was called a heavenly vein. Currently, there are more than 1,000 heavenly veins in every corner of the world, and some are even hidden in the deep sea. Huaxiao Nation had 20% of the total number of heavenly veins, and almost all the developed cities were built on them. Heavenly veins themselves were an important source of energy for cities. High-level underground spirit veins could be regenerated, which meant that in theory, they had an inexhaustible source of energy. However, this had to be based on a balance between supply and consumption. In the current era of national cultivation, cultivators were using more and more energy from spirit veins every year. In the long run, no matter how many spirit veins there were, they wouldn't be able to bear the burden. Seeking a path of sustainable development on the premise of protecting the ecological environment is an unchanging topic for human cultivators. Teacher Pan rested both hands on the lectern, her gaze extremely serious. A lot of people hadn't expected Teacher Pan's lecture today to be so profound. This topic didn't have much to do with the Tao Talismans class, but as a teacher in charge, she also had to take into account the moral education of the students. Thus, Teacher Pan wouldn't be stingy in using some of her class time to guide the students to establish correct values. Anyway, there were still a lot of physical education classes this semester. But as for why he had brought up the topic of underground spirit veins today, it wasn't just because Old Antique had started in the morning, but also because a criminal gang which specialized in robbing underground spirit veins had recently sprung up across the country. This gang had a strict organizational structure and a clear division of labor. It should be the most dangerous criminal gang since the Immortal Mansion was breached. Stealing spirit veins is just a crime. Once you're caught, you won't even have the right to go to jail. You'll be sentenced to death. Teacher Pan said solemnly to everyone in the class, if the spirit veins are robbed clean and the energy is cut off, not only will it have a huge impact on the regional economy, it will also have a huge impact on the living environment of cultivators. And the most important thing is that the barriers set up in every city are based on spirit veins. Once the underground spirit veins are robbed, the stability of the barriers will be affected and the city will be at great risk. Teacher, have we locked onto the leader of this organization? Based on the joint investigation conducted by police stations all over the country, the leader of this organization is the new #1 figure in the dark network. But at the moment, we don't know much about this person, and we can't accurately determine his identity or ability. We can only roughly estimate his figure. Currently, the police have given this suspect in the spirit vein robbery a code name, #1. I believe it won't be long before he's caught. Robbing spirit veins, it wasn't that Wang Ling hadn't expected such a lunatic to appear. But underground spirit veins weren't easy to find. They were hidden very deep, almost close to the Earth's core, and ordinary people couldn't come into contact with them at all. At the moment, high-precision magic treasures were used to mine the energy of spirit veins deep underground. These high-precision magic treasures had independent energy bases and were heavily guarded. This was because the work of extracting energy from underground spirit veins was extremely dangerous. Once the energy base exploded, the entire city would be affected. But based on the energy base's defensive measures, it was basically impossible for this to happen. This group of people were actually able to extract underground spirit veins with their bare hands. They definitely had their own special method. After hearing the news from Teacher Pan in class, Wang Ling quietly pondered this in his heart. Things hadn't been peaceful recently. He had just helped Wang Nuan settle the matter, and now this group of strange people had come out to mine spirit veins. Elsewhere, Ajua hadn't made any progress with Bai Youquan's interrogation. It was said that Bai Youquan's attitude was very unyielding, and he refused to say a word. His memory had been shattered by Fate Dao, and even when the police forcibly probed his memories, they couldn't extract any useful information. On the contrary, because of Bai Youquan's arrest, the Black Shadow Army seemed to have quieted down recently and wasn't making any big moves. But this was what worried Wang Ling and Ajua the most. They had already experienced too much of the calm before the storm. Biding their time wasn't a sign of peace. It was very likely that an even bigger conspiracy was brewing behind the scenes. Near the end of school that day, Wang Ling slipped into the toilet and prepared to use a teleportation spell to escape early. He didn't know what other strange things would happen if he continued to stay at school with Lotus Sunday. But just as Wang Ling was about to slip away, he heard a boy's voice in the corridor. Classmate Lotus Sun. Wang Ling looked in the direction of the voice. Using the king's eye, he saw a boy from the next class standing in front of Lotus Sun with a flushed face, as if he had mustered up all his courage. A confession. Wang Ling raised his eyebrows. This wasn't the first time Wang Ling had seen this scene. Since the start of the first semester, Lotus Sun had received a number of confessions from boys one after another. Wang Ling couldn't catch up to the spirit of bracing himself even when he knew he would be rejected. And Lotus Sun herself seemed to enjoy the process of being confessed to. Just as she was about to give him the good guy card, the boy who had been about to confess suddenly yelled at her, "Classmate Lotus Sun, I hate you. I hate you the most. I beg you, don't show up in front of me again. Everyone. Chapter 1088. Wang Ling never thought that the situation he had been most worried about would still happen, and it had happened so unexpectedly. It was just that the bug in singles curse this time wasn't as complicated as before. Looking at the current situation, it probably only spread to the next confessor and wasn't spreading on a large scale like the last time. This time, it was a one-way transmission. That was to say, starting from Lotus Sun, if student A confessed to Lotus Sun, the curse would spread to student A. Then, if student B wanted to confess to student A, the curse would spread to student B. Thus, after realizing the problem with the curse this time, Wang Ling's first reaction was to look at the appearance of the boy who had confessed to Lotus Sunday. This boy was actually pretty good looking. He looked refined and had clean and fair skin. He was probably the type that little girls liked. That was to say, it wasn't impossible for this brother to be confessed to. Seeing this, Wang Ling couldn't help sighing in his heart. As expected, confessions were a game played by people who lived in the Attractiveness Association all year round. If this singles curse had been applied to an ordinary-looking person, then the curse probably wouldn't be able to continue spreading. This type of bug was actually very simple. It wouldn't cause too much harm. As long as no one confessed to this brother in the next 3 days, it wouldn't continue to spread. But Wang Ling still paid attention and planned to secretly observe this brother of his. And so, the next day, on November 6th, this brother who had shouted his disdain at Lotus Sun in public became a hot topic. His name was worshipped as a warrior, and it started to spread among all the classes. God, this Xiaoming really has guts. Yesterday, he actually said he hated Lotus Sun in front of her. I'm afraid he doesn't want to stay in number 60 high anymore. Really? When did that happen? Why didn't I know about it? You slipped away too fast after school yesterday, so you missed the show. Lotus Sun was stupefied at the time, and I heard that she was so angry that her face turned red. Listening to the discussion in class, Wang Ling learned that brother's name, Xiaoming. Of course, Wang Ling didn't think that Lotus Sun was a particularly petty person who would do anything to Xiaoming because of his rudeness yesterday. But if Xiaoming really suffered revenge, Wang Ling would still take action. After all, he was the cause of this incident, and it was his responsibility to deal with the aftermath. That would depend on how things would develop next. As number 60 high's little gossip expert, Dopey Gua arrived at school early in the morning and waited for Lotus Sun to come to class so that he could personally ask her about the situation. Lotus Sun was the second person involved in Xiaoming's incident yesterday, and everyone in class was most concerned about her attitude towards it. Unfortunately, it seemed that Lotus Sun had asked for leave today. Student Lotus Sun, who had always been punctual, hadn't arrived at school on time. It's over. Looks like he's quite angry. Collecting homework, Little Peanut sighed deeply. Offending classmate Lotus Sun. I'm afraid her bodyguards are going to throw her into the river. Dopey Guo was also confused about this matter. Who can tell me what Lotus Sun's reaction was like yesterday? I left early yesterday and didn't see it. I heard people from other classes say that she's about to explode from anger. When has student Lotus Sun ever been humiliated like this in public? She must be furious. I heard that her face was all red yesterday, and she left without saying a word. Then what about that Xiaoming? Xiaoming? After he said that yesterday, he fainted on the spot. Fainted? Everyone was horrified. What kind of ridiculous move was this? After saying such earth-shattering words on the spot, he even scared himself into fainting. This bro is also a genius. In short, whether it's student Lotus Sun or student Xiaoming, they haven't said anything since yesterday's incident. Instead, student Xiaoming won a large number of supporters. Currently, our school's Protect Rome Club and Xiaoming's Warrior Club are evenly matched, and neither side could do anything to the other. Little Peanut explained the current situation. Protect Rome Club and Warrior Club. These were the two student organizations that Lotus Sun had set up after entering number 60 high. The meaning of Protect Rome Club was very clear. It was a group of boys who specialized in protecting Lotus Sun, but didn't have the guts to confess their love to her. These boys were willing to be her flower protectors and become her fans. The Warrior Club, on the other hand, was a group of warriors who had already confessed their love to Lotus Sun. Unfortunately, they had all been rejected by her. Thus, the biggest goal of the Warrior Club was to wreak havoc. Any other boy who had anything to do with Lotus Sun would suffer retaliation from the Warrior Club. For example, when Wang Ling and Lotus Sun had tutored one-on-one the last time, those senior boys had been members of the Warrior Club. Their attitude was very clear. If they couldn't get someone, no one else could either. At the same time, their attitudes toward Lotus Sun were ambiguous. From liking her at the very beginning to loathing her after being rejected, the emotional entanglement between liking and loathing was extremely complicated. But it just so happened that Xia Ming from the next class had performed such an earth-shattering feat yesterday, which instantly roused the Warrior Union's members. If this story continued to develop, Wang Ling felt that this Xia Ming might soon become the president of the Warrior Club. Xia Ming and Fang Xing were in the same class as each other in Class 2, so Fang Xing was very clear about Xia Ming's usual situation. Xia Ming had spent a whole semester accumulating strength, and had finally plucked up the courage to confess his love to Lotus Sun at the start of the second semester. However, he had never thought that what he would say would actually be the complete opposite of what he was thinking. This undoubtedly made Xia Ming feel like he had been bewitched. Thus, he didn't dare say anything at all, and even thought about transferring schools. Fang Xing took in the situation. The truth was that Fang Xing had already guessed the whole story from beginning to end. He had come to Class 3's door many times to secretly observe Wang Ling's reaction through the window, only to find that he was as calm as ever. What would the final outcome of this matter be? Fang Xing was curious. He knew that Xia Ming's condition was due to some kind of curse, but the problem was that Wang Ling had made up this curse himself, and without knowing the principle behind it, no one could break it. As for a way to break it, it wasn't like there was no way. As long as Wang Ling confessed to Xia Ming and the curse rebounded on Fang Xing, this matter would be over. But just thinking about it, it was impossible for that to happen. The word confession didn't exist for Wang Ling. What was more, Xia Ming was a boy. Chapter 1089. Although Xia Ming was revered as a warrior, his heart was in deep torment at that moment. He had been building up his strength for half a semester before he had finally spoken out loud with great difficulty. But in the end, he had dropped the ball at the critical moment. He didn't know why his words had turned into such nonsense when they left his mouth. Now, Xia Ming was caught in a dilemma. He didn't want to become a warrior of the Warrior Club, and he still deeply liked Lotus Sunday. But the school's Warrior Club now revered him as a hero. If his feelings were exposed, this bunch of people would probably take revenge on him. So in class today, Xia Ming was absent-minded all day. He experienced what only classmate Lotus Sun could experience, what felt like to be the focus of the school. If number 60 High had a hot search list now, Xia Ming would definitely be on the front page of the day with the word explosive next to it. But Xia Ming didn't know when the hot search list would disappear. When he passed by Class 3 during break, Xia Ming looked at Lotus Sun's empty seat. He had heard early on that Lotus Sun had been so angry at him yesterday that she had fallen ill and hadn't come to school. Xia Ming hadn't thought it was that exaggerated, but when he passed by, he realized that it was actually true. Of course, Xia Ming's purpose in coming to Class 3 wasn't just to look for Lotus Sun. When the focus of the incident during break suddenly appeared in class, there was an immediate uproar around him. Isn't that Xia Ming, the male lead in yesterday's news? A few people in the class began to shout and wrangle. I'm really sorry about what happened yesterday. Xia Ming walked up to the dais and bowed to everyone in class. He knew Lotus Sun's status in Class 3, and that almost everyone liked her. He had acted out of his mind yesterday, so he would definitely be hated by the people in Class 3. In order not to make more enemies for himself, Xia Ming had been conflicted for a long time before finally plucking up the courage to apologize again. This apology was immediately met with applause from Class 3. Xia Ming raised his head with a puzzled expression on his face. Super Chun stepped forward and directly put his arm around Xiaoming's neck. Bro, to be honest, I was dumbfounded by what you did yesterday. Who taught you how to pick up girls? Pick up girls? Xiaoming. Student Lotus Sun has never had such a big reaction before. Super Chin laughed. Don't worry, I've already asked around. She's not angry. If she was really angry, you would have been killed by classmate Sun's bodyguards on your way to school this morning. Wang Ling. Super Chin wasn't lying at all. If Lotus Sun really was angry, she wouldn't have needed to say anything at all. Given Huagua Water Curtain Group status, it was a piece of cake for them to arrange for a student's transfer. Coupled with Super Chin's open mouth, the fact that Lotus Sun wasn't angry was even more concrete evidence. At least in Wang Ling's opinion, it was true. How do you know so much? Dopey Gui didn't dare believe it. Everyone in class also looked at Super Chin curiously. It's like this. Lotus Sun has a childhood friend who's always been training in my family's body techniques dojo. I have her WeChat, so I was gossiping about classmate Sun just now. I didn't expect her to tell me everything, Super Chin said. Then what did this childhood friend say? She said that after Lotus Sun went back yesterday, those bodyguards saw that student Sun had been silent the whole time. So they asked her to go over and talk to her. After talking to her for about 2 hours, this childhood friend realized that Lotus Sun didn't seem to be really angry. Super Chun rubbed his chin and said, but she didn't tell me the specifics. In any case, one thing is for sure. Student Lotus Sun seems to have taken a liking to Xiaoming. Of course, doesn't necessarily mean that she likes him. Maybe she just has a good impression of him. Wang Ling, Xiaoming, everyone. As soon as Super Chin said that, there was a burst of F***K in class. In a flash, everyone seemed to understand what on earth Xiaoming's operation yesterday was all about. It turned out that he hadn't really hated her at all. It had been a reverse confession in front of everyone. It turned out that he had used a reverse confession to attract student Lotus Sun's attention and was trying to express his feelings in this ingenious way. Everyone was stupefied. It wasn't just class 3. When the students in the corridor who had been watching Xiaoming, the male lead of the news, heard this news, their mouths dropped open and their eyes were filled with disbelief and horror. GG, what kind of godly operation is this? Everyone was completely horrified. The entire incident had taken a turn for the worse, and number 60 High was once again in an uproar. It was very difficult for this kind of plot to happen in real life under normal circumstances. Perhaps only an idiotic author who wrote songs every day without updating them, and who confidently stopped updating and went around being naughty would be able to write something like this. So this time, the whole school knew that Lotus Sun actually liked Xiaoming. Xiaoming had thought that the Warrior Union would retaliate against him after the turn for the worse. But after learning the truth, the brothers in the Warrior Union all looked at him with adoration in their eyes. In an instant, Xiaoming became number 60 High's love guru. During the afternoon break, there was a continuous stream of people coming to him to ask him questions about confessions. Master Xiaoming, please teach me how to pick up girls. We won't be able to learn this trick of yours. A boy from another class came up to Xiaoming and looked at him with adoration in his eyes. I've been pursuing a girl from another school recently. She can't be considered pretty, but she's the tsundere type. Master Xiaoming, please teach me the right way to confess. How should I confess so that I won't be rejected? You have to be brave. Xiaoming didn't know how to answer. After all, even he himself had been lucky. Who knew that his reverse confession would make Lotus Sun develop a good impression of him? Instead, the second boy came up to Xiaoming. Master Xia, I have a big sister next door that I've liked for a long time, and she's very gentle. Also, she likes anime and cosplay very much. How can I win her favor? You have to be brave, Xiaoming said. A third boy came up to Xiaoming. Mr. Xiaoming, I actually have a younger sister. Of course, my parents adopted her when I was little. We're not actually related by blood. May I ask if I should be brave as well? You have to be brave and learn about our country's criminal laws, Xiaoming said. Chapter 1090. At lunchtime, It was Wang Ling's first time experiencing the canteen's unimpeded flow. Since most of the boys had taken advantage of the lunchtime break to ask Xiao Ming questions about love, there were fewer students in the canteen. With fewer people eating, the hands of the auntie in charge of the cafeteria were no longer trembling. She wished that the students who came to eat more. Otherwise, the leftovers would be collected into buckets of swill and sent to the dragon pig farmers. The scariest thing was that once these dragon pigs were fattened, they would be sold to the physiognomy market and be processed into highly toxic pork chops by Jiayin. This was a true waste. We're all growing up. How can we not eat? After asking a student why there were so few people, Mother Wan took off her apron in front of everyone, intending to go to Xiao Ming's place and pull people over for dinner. 5 or 6 minutes later, a classmate who had come over to eat lunch after failing to get a consultation said that Mother Wan had also fallen. Everyone was horrified. So Mother Wan isn't married yet? An insider replied. Yes, but the old men who were with Mother Wan didn't live long. Because of dark cuisine? I heard that's not the case. It's just that his body isn't good and his lifespan isn't long. Everyone was speechless. Mother Wan had the appearance of cursing her husband. Wang Ling picked up his plate, and the old auntie who had been serving his food scooped out a large pile of meat for him. Today's lunch was scrambled eggs with tomatoes, braised meatballs, braised pork, and stir-fried assorted vegetables. The soup was winter melon and pork rib soup. Every time he saw braised meatballs and brown sauce or braised pork, he always had a habit of asking the auntie to pour a spoonful of gravy over the rice so that it tasted more delicious. Wang Ling, you eat so much every time. Why don't you put on weight? Super Chun was extremely envious. As a muscle-building fan, Super Chun also liked to eat meat, but he had to control his food intake at every meal. It hadn't been easy to build up a figure, and if you weren't careful, you'd get fat again. Boys like Super Chun, who were especially concerned about muscles, often had to pay attention to their body fat percentage. Super Chun's body fat percentage was currently at 11%, which wasn't bad. Wang Ling picked up a meatball and sent it straight into his mouth. There was actually no such thing as not getting fat from eating too much, but Wang Ling could rub the fat off. If he got fat, he would just rub it a little, and the fat that had been rubbed off wasn't completely useless. This was the meat he had rubbed off of his body, and he had stored all this extra meat in the space of the king's eye. He thought that if he was injured one day, this fat could be used to fill up his wound. But regrettably, so far, no living creature in this universe had been able to hurt Wang Ling. Looking at the amount of fat Wang Ling had stored in the king's eye space over the years, he estimated that it should be more than 200 kilograms, which was about the weight of a pig. As they ate, Wang Ling saw Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen sitting at a table not far away, and the scene looked very harmonious. He heard that the two of them quarreled every other day at Wei Zhi's place, and it was only because Wang Ling was at school that they calmed down a little. On the other side, Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan also got their food and sat at the table next to Wang Ling. They actually wanted to sit at the same table as Wang Ling, but this was a matter of first come, first served. Wang Ling could only blame himself for being more popular than he had imagined. When he sat down, Super Chun, Dopey Gua, Little Peanut, and Fong Xing would basically sit with him. It was 3 of these 4 people who were having lunch with Wang Ling today. Apparently, Little Peanut had also gone to consult Xiao Ming about love. Halfway through the meal, Hirogwa suddenly became nosy. Wang Ling, is this really okay? Wang Ling. Hirogwa, if Lotus-san really falls in love with Xiao Ming because of this, won't you suffer a huge loss? At best, it's at the stage where she has a good impression of him. If you fight for it again, who knows, you might be able to win her heart back. Wang Ling chewed the braised pork in his mouth and was silent. If Xiao Ming and Lotus-san ended up together, his own attitude naturally wouldn't matter. That way, Lotus-san's attention on him would be completely transferred to Xiao Ming. For Wang Ling, Lotus-san was actually an outstanding and good girl, but it was precisely because she was so outstanding and eye-catching that Wang Ling often felt uncomfortable. Feelings couldn't be forced. It was everyone's freedom to like who they liked. Of course, everyone also had the right to be liked. Does anyone want meat? If you want meat, come and help yourself. After a few bites, there was still a lot left on Super Chin's plate. Today, he still had to control his appetite. Dopey didn't stand on ceremony at all and ate all the remaining meat on Super Chin's plate. Why aren't you eating? After taking the meat from Super Chin's plate to his side, Dopey looked at Fong Xing. In number 60 high, Dopey realized that apart from Wang Ling, the person he couldn't see through the most was this Class 2's Fong Xing. This was a little strange. I don't need to eat. I'm already full from listening to gossip. Fong Xing crossed his fingers and narrowed his eyes slightly as he smiled. If Lotus Sun and Xiaoming got together, he would raise both hands in support. But for some reason, as Wang Ling ate, he felt that something wasn't right. He thought of Super Chin's consecrated mouth's conclusion about Lotus Sun and Xiaoming's relationship. At most, it was just a good impression, not necessarily liking. The main point, not necessarily liking, that was to say Lotus Sun actually might not like Xiaoming. His consecrated mouth hadn't officially come to a conclusion. All of a sudden, Wang Ling felt that things had become a little messy that afternoon. The heroine of this incident, Lotus Sun, finally appeared. The whole of number 60 high was in an uproar once again after a night of intense mental struggle. Lotus Sun finally decided to look straight at her heart. After class in the afternoon, Xiaoming was practically pushed into grade 1, class 3 by a group of people. He faced Lotus Sun, and the two of them faced the class as well as the corridor full of students from other classes, both of them blushing a little. Go, Master Xiaoming. Support Xiaoming. Take down Lotus Sun. There was a hubbub of voices in the corridor. Wang Ling sat in a corner of the classroom, silently eating a melon. He really was eating a melon. Wang Ling had a habit of eating fruit after meals. Today's fruit was a watermelon, which Mother Wang had brought him in the morning. When he took it out, he casually cast the freeze spell, and he would immediately be able to eat the iced watermelon. Classmate Lotus Sun, classmate Xiaoming. At that moment, Xiaoming and Lotus Sun spoke at the same time. Everyone's gazes started to drift back and forth between the two of them. You first. You first. Again, they spoke in unison. Everyone thought in their hearts that this was most likely going to work. This was too tacit. Even the rhythm of their words was the same. Then I'll go first. Lotus Sun said slowly after calming down. Hearing Lotus Sun's words, Xiaoming's legs almost gave way. He had never been confessed to by a girl before. If Lotus Sun really did confess to him, he would wake up laughing even in his dreams. Classmate Lotus Sun, go ahead. At that moment, Xiaoming took a deep breath and was already prepared to be confessed to. Lotus Sun looked at Xiaoming with a smile in her eyes. Xiaoming, what you did yesterday was actually because you wanted to use this kind of ingenious method to attract my attention. I actually wasn't angry, Xiaoming. I know, Lotus Sun smiled. So you don't have to apologize to me. Besides, it's all thanks to classmate Xiaoming. You gave me the inspiration. Xiaoming was blank. Huh? Lotus Sun took a deep breath and calmed herself down. To be honest, Xiaoming's ingenious method of confession yesterday had indeed given Lotus Sun great inspiration. All along, Lotus Sun had wanted to attract someone's attention, but every time, that person would always ignore her. So after struggling with her thoughts all night and all morning, Lotus Sun was finally enlightened by Xiaoming's method of confession. Now that there were so many onlookers, would she be able to attract his attention if she said loudly in front of everyone that she hated him? She had already thought of her lines, which were mainly to copy what Xiaoming had said yesterday. The lines were as follows. Classmate Wang Ling, I hate you. I hate you the most. I beg you, don't show up in front of me again. At this thought, Lotus Sun turned to look at Wang Ling. Lotus Sun's loud confession rang out. Classmate Wang Ling, I like you. I like you the most. I beg you, please stay by my side. In that instant, Wang Ling was so frightened that he spat out a mouthful of watermelon juice and even dropped the fork in his hand. Chapter 1091. The sudden confession caught Wang Ling off guard. and he spat out a mouthful of watermelon juice. His originally expressionless face finally broke at that moment as it turned into an extremely horrified expression. But this change in expression happened so quickly that it was almost instantaneous, and a lot of people didn't catch it. The sudden turn of events left everyone speechless. Xiao Ming was stupefied, and so were his fans in the corridor. They couldn't figure out how such an astonishing reversal had happened. It turned out that the person classmate Lotus Sun truly liked was still Wang Ling. A lot of people felt that today's outcome was unexpected, but it was reasonable. After all, at the start of grade 1 at number 60 high school, Wang Ling and classmate Lotus Sun had gone to the Xiao family compound for a date. Although they had been attacked by Shadow Stream at that time, they had escaped danger. After that, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun's relationship didn't progress any further. Of course, this could also be because the author herself couldn't be bothered to write about it. In short, most people wouldn't be too surprised that something like this had happened again, because it had been foreshadowed before. Wang Ling took a tissue and wiped the watermelon juice from the corner of his mouth. There were a lot of eyes in this situation, and everyone had their own opinions. It wasn't very realistic to directly cast a spell to erase her memory, because there were surveillance cameras in the corridors of the classrooms. There would always be clues. In the end, Wang Ling felt that this was still his fault. It was his singles curse that had been too careless in its design. If the meaning was completely opposite to what was being expressed, it could also be used in reverse to complete his confession. At that moment, after Lotus Sun's resounding confession, the audience fell deathly silent. A lot of busybodies started to clap their hands rhythmically on the side. Together, together, together. Wang Ling never thought that such a low-key person like him would actually become the center of attention once again. As onlookers, the public's reaction to this matter was always to watch a good show. Even if there were a lot of Xiao Ming's supporters in the crowd, they followed the trend and started to go with the flow to bless the couple. Enough! Amidst the clamor, Xiao Ming, who had been standing solemnly on the dais, finally let out a resounding roar. His body trembled slightly as complex emotions intertwined together. This was like a roller coaster ride, and Xiao Ming's tense emotions finally exploded in that moment. Wang Ling. Xiao Ming's eyes were fixed on Wang Ling, and he trembled with anger. I want to duel with you. Don't leave after school if you have the guts. Wang Ling. Thus, on that very day, a battle between the two men officially began. This matter spread like wildfire, and in the end, even the teacher knew about it. Except for more old-fashioned teachers like Teacher Pan, most teachers turned a blind eye to students' emotional problems. As long as they didn't cross the line, it was very normal for men and women to develop good feelings for each other. Who doesn't have youth? The teachers in the office were all discussing. If it were any other student, they wouldn't just sit and watch. Lotus Sun's situation was a little more complicated. Student Lotus Sun has always been reserved. Why is she so simple and crude this time? You've met someone you really like. This is youth. Old Antique chuckled. But I didn't expect this kid Xiao Ming to actually have the courage to declare war on our class's Wang Ling. This kid has always been very timid. It seems that student Sun's confession was a big blow to him. Then what's student Wang Ling's attitude? The female teacher asked nosily. What attitude could Wang Ling have? Naturally, he maintained his deadpan expression. Teachers who were familiar with Wang Ling actually knew what kind of person he was. He was a very average child. His grades were always in the middle, neither improving nor falling behind. He was usually a man of few words and didn't speak more than 10 words a day. But it just so happened that a high-profile young miss like student Lotus Sun had taken a liking to such a taciturn gourd. The teachers thought it over, and suddenly felt that there was actually the principle that yin and yang coexisted, and that things would always move in the opposite direction when pushed to the extreme. Wang Ling, there won't be a problem. As the discussion in the office was in full swing, Teacher Pan pushed up her gold-rimmed glasses and suddenly said this out of the blue. Few boys might be able to control themselves in the face of student Lotus Sun's sugar-coated bullets, but Teacher Pan knew Wang Ling very well. It definitely wouldn't be easy to truly sway Wang Ling's heart. What should we do? Should we organize a fight after school? Old Antique took a sip of coffee and asked tentatively. They won't fight. Teacher Pan said confidently. If they make a mistake, they'll be punished according to school rules. All the teachers in the office were silent. They stared at Teacher Pan's meticulous and serious expression and didn't say anything. A few minutes later, Teacher Pan left with a pile of exam papers, and the office started to bustle with activity. Teacher Wang, a female teacher, rushed up to Old Antique. What's in your snack aisle? Old Antique opened a drawer. Everything you want, it's here. I'll buy a bag of popcorn. I want to watch a fight, said the female teacher. Old Antique, the moment she opened her mouth, the office instantly boiled over. I'll buy 2 bags. I'll also bet 200 on Xiaoming. Xiaoming will definitely win. I'll also bet on Xiaoming. Xiaoming's exam grades are pretty good, and his body techniques are also excellent. I'll bet 1,000. You're all betting on Xiaoming? Old Antique simply couldn't believe it. In just a few minutes, the odds between Wang Ling and Xiaoming had already reached 100. Old Antique silently took out 50 yuan in change from his pocket and joined in the fun. You're all betting on Xiaoming? Then I'll support our class's Wang Ling. As Teacher Pan had said, Wang Ling had always hated being the center of attention. If it had just been Lotus Sun's confession, he could actually think of a way to deal with it. But Wang Ling never thought that things would actually develop to the point of a fight. And now, the whole school knew that he and Xiaoming were going to duel for love. Accepting the challenge would only further increase Lotus Sun's impression of him. If he didn't accept the challenge, he would also be despised and spurned by many of the boys at school. Wang Ling couldn't make a choice in this situation, because it seemed that he would become the center of attention if he didn't accept the challenge. Compared with being spurned by the whole school, Wang Ling still decided to accept the challenge. But it was really tiring to fake a fight. For Wang Ling, Xiaoming was really too weak and couldn't withstand a single blow at all. Chapter 1092. After school, there was a sea of people on the sports field. From grade 1 to grade 3, boys and girls surrounded the plastic running track, waiting for this impending duel between men. The teachers stood on the teaching building and observed the situation in secret. They would take action when necessary to maintain order, and at the same time, they sighed in their hearts at Lotus Sun's influence. As expected of the young miss of Huaguo Water Curtain Group, if the target of the two boys' fight at this time hadn't been Lotus Sun, it probably wouldn't have attracted the attention of all the teachers and students in the school. It would be great if they could be so enthusiastic about the supplementary lessons after school. One teacher smiled bitterly. But why didn't the director or the headmaster stop them? The headmaster said that it's good to let the students compare notes now that school has just started. Also, there's going to be an exchange meet between schools in Peiyuan District and other districts soon. Another exchange meet? What's it this time? Swordsmanship? Talismans? Or survival skills? I heard it's a body techniques exchange. Xiaoming is actually an outstanding candidate. Each school will form a delegation of 10 people, and Headmaster Chen's name list has already been confirmed. It's just that Headmaster Chen has been stuck between student Xiaoming and student Wang Ling for the last spot. In terms of overall grades, Wang Ling's grades aren't as good as Xiaoming's, right? That's true. But in all the school exchange events that student Wang Ling participated in the first half of the semester, our school won in the end. After this teacher said this, the other teachers on the side suddenly understood. The power of a mascot was still formidable. They had almost forgotten that this student Wang Ling was also a mascot. The duel was about to begin, but no one saw Lotus Sun at all. After confessing her love to Wang Ling in public, Lotus Sun was so ashamed that she blushed and went home surrounded by a group of bodyguards. However, the live broadcast of the duel was still broadcast live by the bodyguards who remained at the school, so Lotus Sun could watch it at home. At that moment, she stared at the sea of people on the sports field with a very complicated expression on her face. She had never thought that there would be a day when she would confess to a boy in front of so many people. Furthermore, it had actually triggered this battle of jealousy. AI, it actually wasn't her fault that she was good-looking. On the other side, in the office on the top floor of Huagua Water Curtain Group's headquarters building, in front of the huge chairman's office, a dignified old man with white hair combed back and a pipe in his mouth also noticed what happened in the school. Sun Iyuan, the chairman of Huagua Water Curtain Group, already knew that his granddaughter had publicly confessed to a boy. After learning about this, Grandpa Sheng was also very shocked, and he almost choked on the spit in his mouth. What? Did Rongrong confess to someone? Sun Iyuan felt incredulous. Since ancient times, it was only his granddaughter who was confessed to and then given a good person card. Taking the initiative to confess to someone was something that old man Sun didn't even dare to imagine. Yes, I heard that the young lady confessed to a boy very loudly and said that she wanted to be with him forever. The assistant in the white uniform described the situation in a euphemistic manner. He thought that old man Sun would be angry. After all, it wasn't like there hadn't been some sons of high-ranking officials who pestered the young lady before. However, after receiving a huge sum of money from the old man, these people had left her side in a half-bribe and half-blackmail manner. However, old man Sun's attitude was somewhat unexpected. Not only was the old man not angry, but he also looked quite happy this time. Rongrong has never told any guy that she wants to be with him before. It seems that she's serious this time. Is that what the chairman thinks? What else? Old man Sun Iyuan then asked, which boy did Rongrong confess to? The assistant pulled up the video feed from number 60 High's live broadcast and then pointed to a handsome student with dead fish eyes on the screen. Actually, the chairman might have heard of this person before. He's the student who went to the Shao family compound with a young lady last semester and was attacked by Shadow Stream. Oh, so it's him. But what's his name again? I think he's called Wang. The assistant patted his head. For some reason, the words were clearly on the tip of his tongue, but he couldn't bring himself to say them. At that moment, Wang Ling's great shielding spell was still working to a certain extent. The effect of the great shielding spell would only disappear after the user had seen Wang Ling's real face. Of course, the real face here was worth seeing Wang Ling in person and not through this kind of live broadcast. Even if the assistant saw Wang Ling's face in the video feed, he still wouldn't be able to recall any information about him. It's fine if you can't remember. We'll look into it later. Watching the battle is more important. Old man Sun waved his hand indifferently, and the assistant finally breathed a sigh of relief. The assistant used a magic treasure to project the live broadcast image in the air. Both of them were wearing school uniforms, but old man Sun could still see through Wang Ling's trademark dead fish eyes and fix his gaze firmly on Wang Ling. His looks are passable, but because of these dead fish eyes, he looks a little listless. Old man Sun nodded thoughtfully. If this classmate, Wang, confirms that he wants to go out with Rongrong later, find someone to ask if he's willing to have his double eyelids and canthus removed. I'll pay for the cost and compensation. The assistant was silent for a while, then said, but Miss said she likes everything about classmate Wang. Oh, is that so? Rongrong actually likes this type? When they went to the Shao family compound before, I thought Rongrong just randomly found a boy to play with her. I didn't expect her to fall in love with him then. Old man Sun sighed. Forget it. Since Rongrong likes him, he can keep his eyelids. But, after saying that, old man Sun turned to look at the assistant next to him. Why does Rongrong always look for you to tell her everything? The assistant was blank for a moment, and the expression on his face turned fearful. At first, Miss wanted me to keep it a secret, but this matter attracted too much attention, and I was worried that it wouldn't be good, so I decided to tell the chairman. It's good that you didn't hide it from me, but you also promised Rongrong not to tell me, and you didn't keep your promise. Your merits and demerits offset each other. You don't have any objections to this, right? No, the assistant's heart. Old man Sun continued to look at the screen. How old is this classmate Wang? How is he compared to Rongrong? He doesn't look small. The assistant pulled open his pants and glanced at them. I don't know exactly how big he is, but he should be bigger than mine, right? Compared to Miss, there's no comparison. Even Miss doesn't have one. Shut up. I'm asking about his age. I want to know if he's older or younger than Rongrong. I want to be precise down to the month and day. Chapter 1093. The assistant sighed silently. It turned out that he was asking about his age. He was the one who had been corrupted. It was all because of those old drivers in the company who had led him astray during the team building last year. Now he would go into autopilot mode at the slightest hint. Those people who preached that life was full of suffering and that driving for fun were the real source of all evil. The assistant recalled Wang Ling's birthday. It was the same as before, but he couldn't bring himself to say it even though it was on the tip of his tongue. Helpless, the assistant could only make up a date. I remember it was at the end of the year. He was born in the same year as Mississippi. Is it the end of the year? Old man's son was lost in thought. He hadn't expected that the boy his granddaughter had taken a fancy to would be born at such a suitable time. Do you remember when Rongrong was born and that immortal master told fortune? Chairman, you mean? The assistant was startled. This was actually a family secret, and a small assistant like him shouldn't know about it. But because he had been with old man's son for a long time, there were times when the old man would say something to him when he was vexed and depressed to dispel the bitterness in his heart. When the yin and yang are in chaos, I will dye the blue sky with my membrane blood. Old man's son's thoughts drifted as he recalled what that famous immortal master had said back then. It wasn't a secret in the family that Lotus-san had this so-called yin and yang death tribulation, but many people still treated it as a joke. Although the death tribulation hadn't come true until now, old man's son had always firmly believed it, because that immortal master had clearly said back then. This tribulation had something to do with peach blossoms. In other words, if Rongrong was in love, it was very likely that this problem would occur. Most importantly, it seemed to be a precursor to triggering the yin and yang death tribulation, which had now been preliminarily verified. Old man's son gazed at the image on the screen as he paid close attention to the fight between Wang Ling and Xiaoming. Back then, that immortal master had said that the person who set the curse was born at the beginning of the year, and the person who dispelled the curse was born at the end of the year. And now, it just so happened that these two teenagers of the same age were fighting over his granddaughter's affections. Although the yin and yang death tribulation hadn't been verified, old man's son suddenly felt a little restless. Do you have any information on this, Xiaoming? We've already started looking into it, and we should have news soon, the assistant replied. At that moment, when they looked at the image on the screen again, it looked like the battle between Xiaoming and Wang Ling would break out at any moment. Number 60 High School had 2 elite classes in total. Since Xiaoming and Fangxing were in the same class, he naturally wouldn't be too weak. He was a top student who excelled in his studies, and in the eyes of the teachers, was a straight-A student. If it was a regular class student fighting Xiaoming, their chances of winning would naturally be very low. But his opponent was Wang Ling, and those who only knew Wang Ling's true combat strength were well aware of the gap between them. On the side, Jin Yuan, Gu Xunji, Lu Qingyi, and Wang Zhen sighed with emotion. Standing in a line of students, they used a telepathic spell to communicate in secret. Gu Xunji, I didn't expect Senior Wang to actually accept the challenge. I'm very curious about how he's going to fight this match. Wang Zhen nodded. The disparity in strength is too great. Unless it's an act, there's no way this Xiaoming's body can withstand a single breath from Senior Wang. Wang Zhen's terrifying image of Wang Ling's strength was practically etched into his brain. These experts from the domain of the gods couldn't even last 3 moves against Wang Ling, let alone these foundation establishment students. Hit him with his head? He wouldn't be able to beat them, even if he took off his head. Xiaoming's gaze was fixed on Wang Ling as he pondered what method he should use to defeat him in the cruelest way possible. There were only 2 elite classes in total, and there were 40 students in both classes. Xiaoming's overall ranking was 3rd, while Wang Ling was 20th. How could a student in the middle of the pack fight him? Hit him with his head? He wouldn't be able to beat them even if he took off his head. Xiaoming took a deep breath, then started to slowly accumulate spirit energy in his dantian. Streams of pure, white energy swirled around him in torrents. When a cultivator was accumulating energy, their spirit chi would change color under the influence of their spirit root. This was the principle of spirit chi coloring. However, Xiaming's spirit chi was pure white, which was far beyond the expectations of many of the spectating students. Pure white spirit chi? I remember this Xiaming, isn't he? Oh, so he's a descendant of that ancient divine clan? Ancient divine clan? Even many of the teachers in the teaching building were a little surprised. This is... Wang Zhen narrowed his eyes as he immediately deduced something. There's no mistaking it. It's the ancient divine clan. Lu Qingyan nodded. In the four-person mental barrier, Gu Xuanji was also secretly astonished when he saw Xiaming display this level of power. A descendant of the ancient divine clan? Interesting. I never thought that the ancient divine clan would actually exist on Earth. Jin Yuan sked. The so-called ancient divine clan didn't refer to a single clan, but the combined surnames of the earliest cultivators on Earth in the era of spirit energy. Xiaming's Xia family was a member of the ancient divine clan. But there were a lot of people on Earth with the surname Xia, and not all of them were descendants of the ancient divine clan. The difference lay in the special attribute of the ancient divine clan's spirit root. As long as they were members of the ancient divine clan, their spirit root would resonate with the power of the underground spirit vein. The spirit energy in the underground spirit vein was so pure that when the spirit vein resonated with the spirit root in the ancient divine clan, it would manifest a kind of pure white spirit chi. Many people present were a little surprised that Xiaming was a member of the ancient divine clan. They suddenly remembered that Xiaming seemed to be deliberately hiding something every time he used a spell. Now that they thought about it, Xiaming was probably using a special method to suppress the neutralization of the attributes between the underground spirit vein and his own spirit root. In this way, he could hide his identity as a member of the ancient divine clan. Now that Xiaming's identity had been exposed, the whole audience was instantly in an uproar. After a member of the ancient divine clan resonated with the underground spirit vein, they would almost never run out of spirit energy in a fight at the same realm. That was to say, Xiaming could last for a very, very long time in a battle of attrition. And what was a foundation establishment cultivator most afraid of? It was a protracted battle. Because of the limitations of their own spirit energy, it was very easy for foundation establishment cultivators to run out of spirit energy in the process of casting spells. To put bluntly, it was because their MP was too low. In Xiaming's current situation, even though his MP was also very low, he could replenish it as he fought. At that moment, the cheers in the audience instantly shifted to Xiaming. In many people's view, Wang Ling already had almost no chance of winning against Xiaming. Whether it was in terms of overall ranking or the uniqueness of his physique, compared with Xiaming, who was a member of the ancient divine clan, Wang Ling seemed too ordinary in all aspects. Chapter 1094. In the headmaster's office, number 60 high school's headmaster, Chun Tianxiang, and Director Shi from the Office of Teaching were also paying attention to this battle that the whole school was watching. Xiaming's identity as a member of the ancient divine clan had always been a secret, and no one had expected it to be exposed in today's battle. Looking at Headmaster Chen's calm expression, Director Shi was even more certain that Headmaster Chun had deliberately allowed this battle to continue. As a descendant of the ancient divine clan, Xiaming had a natural sense of superiority over other students because of his natural advantage in spirit root. This sense of superiority was a double-edged sword. A person with a sense of superiority would be more confident in their actions, but if they were overconfident, it wouldn't be confidence, but arrogance. There is only one descendant of the ancient divine clan in our number 60 high school. This can be considered my test for him, Headmaster Chun said slowly. Number 60 high had also participated in a lot of activities with other schools before, but because Xiaming had signed an agreement with number 60 high that he couldn't expose his identity as a member of the ancient divine clan, his performance hadn't caught everyone's attention, whether it was the exchange event with number 59 High or the joint military training for the 6 schools. Headmaster Chun had originally wanted to test Xia Ming's temperament and see how long he could keep his identity hidden. In the end, he hadn't expected Xia Ming to completely expose himself in the second half of Senior Grade 1. This result also made Headmaster Chen fall into deep thought. To hide one's strength and live as an ordinary person, he believed that this was not something an ordinary person could do. There would always be things in life that didn't go your way. For example, in order to compete with classmate Wang Ling for Lotus Sun's attention, Xia Ming had disregarded the confidentiality agreement and exposed his identity as a member of the ancient divine clan without permission. In Headmaster Chen's view, in the end, this was just the temperament of a child. Xia Ming's growth was far from enough. Number 60 High School taught and educated people, but the truth was that Headmaster Chun was more concerned with cultivating a student's temperament. As teachers, they couldn't just focus on their students' grades. In the end, they still had to guide them onto the right path and cultivate them into people who were useful to society, who were grateful and knew how to contribute. In contrast, Headmaster Chun was actually more satisfied with Wang Ling. Although Wang Ling's grades had always been average since he entered the elite class, he was clearly much better than Xia Ming's mentality. A normal student would be anxious when his grades were average all the time, but Wang Ling? He ate and drank as he pleased, completely disregarding his mediocre results. He hadn't even given a clear response to Lotus Sun's confession. Coming out to accept the challenge now was nothing more than a helpless act of going with the flow. As number 60 High's mascot, Headmaster Chun felt that he hadn't chosen the wrong person. From the previous Spirit Sword Exchange meet to the combined drill for the 6 schools, Wang Ling's performance had always been outstanding. Now, the onlookers were divided into 3 factions. The first group supported Xia Ming. After Xia Ming's identity as a descendant of the ancient divine clan was exposed, they looked forward to his brilliant performance even more. Lotus Sun's confession to Wang Ling really drew too much hatred, and a lot of people wanted nothing more than to rush up and beat Wang Ling up. The second faction was the 5 big shots: Wang Zhen, Gu Xuanji, Lu Qingyi, Fang Xing, and Jin Yuan. Of course, they unwaveringly supported Wang Ling in their hearts, and at the same time wanted to see how Wang Ling would deal with this boring battle. They didn't care at all about winning or losing, and only cared about what they could learn from Wang Ling. The third faction naturally didn't need to be mentioned. Although Wang Ling was usually unsociable and didn't like talking to people, he wasn't completely without friends. Super Chun and Dopey Gua. Their fighting strength and rallying power alone were enough to help Wang Ling win over a large number of stable supporters. At the very least, everyone in Grade 1, Class 3 supported him. Even if they disagreed with this, the students in his class didn't dare express it. Because commissary in charge of studies Little Peanut was also Wang Ling's supporter, they were worried that if they openly disagreed, they wouldn't have enough time to catch up on homework and copy homework in the morning. At that moment, Xia Ming felt that his spirit root had already resonated with it, and a torrent of white spirit qi turned into fine threads that flowed up and down his body. It was indeed astonishing that a mere foundation establishment cultivator could have such an enormous amount of spirit power reserves. But to Wang Ling, this kind of spirit power reserve was child's play. Every pore on Wang Ling's body was in fact a small world that could store enormous amounts of spirit power for him to use. Apart from his pores, the same was true of every cell in his body. There were about 80 trillion cells in the human body. Ignoring the cells that died due to metabolism every day, there were 80 trillion small worlds in Wang Ling's body. Not only that, even his fingernails were filled with spirit power. However, the spirit power in his fingernails was a backup and wasn't as exaggerated as a small world. The spirit power in one fingernail was about the same as a soul formation cultivator's spirit power reserves. Xia Ming currently didn't even have a quarter of the spirit power in his fingernails. What should he do? Should he die with Xia Ming? When he saw the confidence in Xia Ming's eyes, Wang Ling was also secretly calculating in his heart. The only way he could think of was to fight Xia Ming to a draw. That way, the situation might calm down. Classmate Wang Ling, please enlighten me. At that moment, Xia Ming, who had already finished gathering his strength, rushed forward. He spread his feet, and in just a few moves, he had shortened the distance between them. A gust of wind from a fist whistled toward Wang Ling's face. Feeling the wind pressure from it, Wang Ling's first reaction wasn't to take the punch, but to use his body movement to dodge. You shouldn't hit someone in the face. Wang Ling thought that although his face was only average after being pinched, he had never experienced being hit in the face before. He was the only one who would hit someone else. On the other hand, Wang Ling was also considering Xia Ming's safety. If that punch just now had hit Xia Ming's face accurately, even if Wang Ling had deliberately restrained the backlash, Xia Ming would have suffered a comminuted fracture at the very least. The scene of that Shadow Stream Red Ribbon assassin who had failed to assassinate Lotus Sun at school back then and suffered a backlash was still fresh in Wang Ling's mind. Now that everyone was watching, Wang Ling didn't want history to repeat itself. He threw out several consecutive punches in a fluid and smooth manner. Do you only know how to dodge, Wang Ling? Xia Ming mocked Wang Ling as he punched, intentionally or otherwise. To Wang Ling, this kind of mockery was child's play and couldn't truly enrage him at all. Xia Ming had also scored very high in the body technique exam. He cultivated the chaos flowing water fist technique. This fist technique was very consistent and explosive, and it used both fists and legs. However, because it consumed a lot of energy, many people would feel tired at the end of the technique. But Xia Ming was different. He had the advantage of being a descendant of the ancient divine clan, and his endurance was guaranteed. Thus, this chaos flowing water fist technique was a little difficult for Wang Ling. Every move was a slap in the face. This person was really merciless. Wang Ling still didn't make a move and continued to dodge Xia Ming's punches with his flirtatious movements. But this scene made Wang Zhen and the others frown slightly. This kind of dodging seemed meaningless, but for some reason, Wang Zhen felt that Wang Ling was doing it on purpose, as if he was deliberately guiding Xia Ming's punches. Sure enough, in the next moment, Xia Ming's punch actually changed direction the moment it was thrown, and in the end, it actually went for his own face. Chapter 1095. Just like that, Xia Ming was punched in the right side of his face. But it wasn't Wang Ling who had punched him, but Xia Ming himself. The fist techniques of cultivators were extensible. In other words, at the same time the fist was punched out, the spirit energy molecules attached to the fist could drive a portion of the air, causing the invisible air and spirit energy molecules to combine, thus forming an invisible fist membrane around the fist. The thickness of the fist membrane could be thick or thin, and it mainly depended on the control and grasp of the cultivator's own spirit energy. Thus, when Xia Ming's punch was secretly guided by Wang Ling, it was already too late for him to control it, and the punch accurately hit Xia Ming's own face. Wang Ling's extremely misleading body technique was just like a Tai Chi pushing hand, which effortlessly dispelled Xia Ming's punch. But this kind of body technique looked a little baffling. In the eyes of the real bigwigs like Gu Xuanji, it looked like a god, but in the eyes of ordinary people, it looked more like a mistake caused by Wang Ling dodging in a panic. To put it bluntly, most of the people here felt that Wang Ling's luck had given him the upper hand in this duel. As expected of our school's mascot, his luck is too good. That's right, Xia Ming's chaotic flowing water fist technique is famous for being chaotic and fast. If he doesn't practice it well, it'll be like he's sacrificing himself to hurt the enemy. Listening to the discussions around him, Xia Ming couldn't help falling silent. What the F***K was hurting himself to hurt the enemy. It was clearly this kid in front of him. As an opponent, no one had a more intuitive feeling than Xia Ming. While Gu Xunji and the others had already seen through the mystery of Wang Ling's body technique, most of the people present were still in the dark. Only Xia Ming was left to face Wang Ling's strange body technique alone. He didn't want to admit that a person whose grades were always in the middle of the pack could actually beat him in body technique, so he could only silently swallow his frustration. At this point in the fight, Xiao Ming actually already felt that the outcome of this fight was already decided. Wang Ling's body technique was so strange that Xiao Ming couldn't use his fist technique at all. Furthermore, the other party was deliberately guiding Xiao Ming's punches like he was doing Tai Chi, and as they fought, Xiao Ming was injured by several of his own punches. A few minutes later, Xiao Ming was punched again and sent flying. This was the 11th time Xiao Ming had been punched and sent flying. In the beginning, Xiao Ming also thought that there might be something wrong with his fist technique, so he changed his punches several times to attack Wang Ling. But it turned out that this had nothing to do with his fist technique at all. It was to the extent that Xiao Ming didn't even plan to use his fist technique in the end. He directly pounced on Wang Ling and began to unleash a series of violent blows without any regard for the rules. This kind of arrogant attitude, like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey, caused everyone present to be horrified. In the principal's office, Principal Chun, Director Shi, and a few physical education teachers were also watching the battle. "Principal, what kind of fist technique is this?" a PE teacher asked in shock. "Bastard fist," Headmaster Chun replied. "Tortoise fist? What kind of punch is this?" "When you were young, did you fight with the kids next door over toys?" "Yes, I did. Back then, you fought with your tortoise fists." The so-called tortoise fist is a casual fighting style that doesn't focus on any kind of technique. There's a saying that random fists can kill an old master. That's how the story came about. Headmaster Chin sighed. "Then classmate Wang Ling's body technique is the same?" "That's right. This is the tortoise body technique. Moving at will is the highest realm of body techniques. It's all about luck." Headmaster Chun sighed emotionally at Wang Ling's luck. All the teachers, as Headmaster Chun said, Xiao Ming's tortoise fist technique didn't have any palm techniques. It was actually just the most ordinary random fists. But using random fists without using spirit energy would consume a lot of physical strength. After a few sets of random fists, Xiao Ming felt that his physical strength had already reached its limit. On the other hand, Wang Ling had been dodging with his body technique from beginning to end, looking completely at ease, seeing Xiao Ming's hateful gaze. Wang Ling finally realized the importance of acting. Indeed, he had been acting a little too much. After fighting for so long, even if he wasn't panting, his face should have been a little red. Thus, Wang Ling adjusted his skin tone to make himself a little smoky. In passing, he opened his sweat glands and did his best to force a few drops of sweat to roll down his cheeks as he pretended to be very tired. Wang Ling wouldn't feel tired even if he fought like this for several hundred years. But in the end, Xiao Ming was still an ordinary cultivator compared to Wang Ling, and there was no way his physical strength could be limitless. Even if he had a natural advantage in terms of spirit root, there were still certain limitations. Wang Ling secretly opened his king's eye and looked at Xiao Ming's stamina bar. This was Wang Ling's big data spell, which could display some of the values he wanted to see in the form of a horizontal bar graph. For example, his current chi and blood points, his current spirit energy points, his stamina points, and so on. Xiao Ming's stamina points had already reached their limit, and he was only a hair's breadth away from completely collapsing. Wang Ling took a deep breath and calculated when Xiao Ming's next punch would be launched. Thus, as Xiao Ming roared and charged at him, Wang Ling's brain instantly started working at top speed. He captured each of Xiao Ming's movements, and in the end, broke them down and read them into his brain for simulation calculations. He had to accurately calculate the speed of Xiao Ming's punches, the time it would take for him to charge over, and the time it would take for him to use up the last of his stamina points before he fell to the ground. For the last punch, Wang Ling didn't intend to use his body movements to guide Xiao Ming's punches. After all, Xiao Ming had already been badly beaten up. His cheeks were swollen like walnuts, and even his nostrils were full of blood. Everyone couldn't stop sighing at this scene. Earlier, some of them had even discussed going forward to mediate if either side was beaten to the point of bleeding. But in this situation, none of the students were able to persuade him at all. Xiao Ming was the one who had punched him. Xiao Ming was the one who had injured himself. Every punch had landed on his own face. How the F***K were they supposed to persuade him? Wang Ling had chosen a very tricky angle for Xiao Ming's last punch. From this angle, it looked like Xiao Ming's punch had hit Wang Ling, but in fact hadn't hit him at all. After this punch, Xiao Ming finally fell to the ground as his stamina ran out. Wang Ling had calculated his chance and followed Xiao Ming to the ground and lay on the side. Now, Wang Ling suddenly understood how difficult it had been for those old men and women in Peiyuan District to blackmail people back then. Faking an accident was truly an art that required acting skills. Chapter 1096. After Wang Ling and Xiao Ming both landed on the ground, the teachers at the scene swarmed forward to maintain order. Wang Ling had created the illusion that he had been punched, when in fact, he hadn't been injured at all. But Xiao Ming was in a more miserable state. A male teacher carrying a medical kit quickly rushed to the scene. He was wearing a pair of ripped jeans and a striped shirt, as well as a white coat. This was number 60 high school doctor, Xiang Yun. However, Wang Ling had almost no impression of this school doctor. He had never been to the infirmary since entering number 60 high school. But Xiang Yun still had an impression of Wang Ling. On one hand, Wang Ling was number 60 high's mascot. On the other hand, Wang Ling remembered that this was probably the student who had been ambushed by criminals at the school gate and fallen into a space fissure, but had unexpectedly survived. Xiang Yun remembered that he had given Wang Ling a wreath before. He didn't expect the young miss of Huaguo Water Curtain Group to like this type. Now, Xiang Yun was wondering whether he should follow Wang Ling's example and get a dead fish eye. Teacher Xiang, how's the situation? Xiao Ming and Wang Ling's teacher in charge were both present, and Teacher Pan's expression was unusually concerned. On the surface, Wang Ling didn't seem to have sustained any external injuries, and she was worried that Xiao Ming's punch just now might have hurt him. The truth was that Teacher Pan had called the Wang family's small villa when the fight between Xiao Ming and Wang Ling had started, and it was Mother Wang who had answered the phone. A very short conversation took place between Teacher Pan and Mother Wang. Is that classmate Wang Ling's mother? That was it. A student from another class challenged classmate Wang Ling to a duel after school, and classmate Wang Ling accepted the challenge because of the crowd's encouragement. I don't know. Ling Ling got into a fight. Is the classmate who arranged a fight with him okay? On the other side of the phone, Mother Wang's mood was clearly down. She couldn't imagine Wang Ling fighting with other people at all. If Ling Ling wasn't paying attention, the other side would start filming the Headless Horseman anomaly. At that moment, Teacher Pan looked out the window. He just happened to see Xiao Ming being guided by Wang Ling's body technique as he flew off. That student Xia has flown out now. Teacher Pan answered truthfully. Mother Wang was scared out of her wits by this answer. She was already unsteady and felt like the sky was falling down on her. After a few minutes of silence, Mother Wang said in a trembling voice, then, Teacher Pan, please ask the parents on the other side how much they're willing to pay to settle this privately. Teacher Pan was stunned. It took a few more minutes for Teacher Pan to explain to Mother Wang that the situation wasn't that serious. When Teacher Pan looked out the window again, Wang Ling and Xiao Ming had already fallen to the ground. Classmate Wang Ling's mom. It looks like both of them have collapsed. Do you want to come to school to take a look? Teacher Pan asked again. Is classmate Xiao Ming dead? No, that's good. Who knew that when Mother Wang, who had just been scared to death, heard this result, her tone relaxed. It's fine, as long as the other side is fine. Don't worry too much about my Ling Ling. With that, Mother Wang hung up. Teacher Pan was even more shocked. There is actually such a parent in this world. But from the looks of it now, this should be the legendary reaction of a biological mother, right? In that instant, Teacher Pan instantly felt that Wang Ling was really a pitiful child. He ate crappy videos like crispy noodle snacks every day, and his own parents still didn't care about him. As the teacher in charge, she really should show him more love and care. Wang Ling After Xiang Yun's initial examination, it was confirmed that Xia Ming and Wang Ling's lives weren't in danger. It was just that Xia Ming's condition was a little more tragic. Xiang Yun wrote in a small notebook that only the doctor could understand. Classmate Xia, my initial diagnosis is that he has a slight concussion and a slight skull fracture. After using an eye technique, I determined that the fracture is 1 millimeter. 1 millimeter, it shouldn't be a big problem. Xia Ming's teacher in charge heaved a sigh of relief. I'm not done yet, don't worry. In addition to the above problems, classmate Xia Ming's sternum is fractured, his calf bone is fractured, 3 of his ribs are broken, and his right arm is dislocated. I've already helped him reattach the dislocation. As for the rest, my suggestion is to apply a special bone-breaking, life-prolonging ointment externally, and he'll recover in 2 days, Teacher Xiang said. I didn't expect it to be so serious. This classmate Wang Ling is really ruthless. Xia Ming's teacher in charge grit his teeth. No, this has nothing to do with classmate Wang Ling, Xiang Yun said. I've already extracted the DNA cells from the wound, and there's only classmate Xia Ming's DNA. That is to say, these external and internal injuries were all caused by classmate Xia Ming alone. He hit himself. This is a fair and just assessment. If you don't believe me, you can keep the wound and send it to a Class 3 Grade A hospital for reassessment. But if there's a delay on the way, classmate Xia Ming will be the one to suffer. The longer it takes, the more likely there will be repercussions. All the teachers couldn't help falling silent. He had hit himself and ended up in the hospital. There was no way to explain this. Then what about classmate Wang Ling? He can't be completely unscathed, can he? Xia Ming's teacher in charge was still a little unconvinced. He didn't believe it. Xia Ming had been injured all over during the fight, while Wang Ling had been completely unscathed. Actually, Xia Ming's teacher in charge's words reminded Wang Ling. He should also design his own injuries, otherwise it would be too fake. After thinking it over, Wang Ling forced his heart to stop. When the school doctor, Xiang Yun, examined Wang Ling's body again, the expression on his face finally turned to one of alarm. Classmate Wang Ling was still breathing just now, but his heart suddenly stopped. All the teachers present felt their hearts clench at this result. How could this be? He was physically exhausted from the long fight, and when he fell to the ground, his spirit power was blocked and his blood vessels were blocked. Dr. Xiang thought of a reasonable explanation, and then he immediately started to perform high-frequency compressions on Wang Ling's chest, intending to perform CPR. One of you help me. I'll do chest compressions. The remaining one will help Wang Ling with CPR. Wang Ling. As soon as Dr. Xiang said this, several male teachers immediately stepped forward. I'll do it. Do you know how to do CPR? A male teacher retorted. I don't. But I can learn from experience, the male teacher replied. Just blow it in, right? Should I stick out my tongue? As soon as he said this, Wang Ling sat up straight in fright. Chapter 1097. This kind of sober reaction was not so much a shock, but rather a panic. This Xiang Yun also had to be added to the list of resistance. Looking at Xiang Yun's evil smile, Wang Ling fell into deep thought. He was sure that this doctor had probably noticed something and knew that Wang Ling was pretending to be dead, so he had deliberately arranged for the show just now. But it probably wasn't possible for him to see through Wang Ling's tricks. It was more likely that this school doctor had been guessing for many years. In short, this Xiang Yun was a dangerous person. It was better to pay more attention to him in the future. Xiang Yun crouched down to check Wang Ling's condition again, then confirmed with the teachers around him. There's no problem anymore. That was a stressful situation just now. Young people are in good health, so there's a chance that they'll recover on their own. If they're older and have a lower realm, they'll need assistance. As long as classmate Wang Ling is fine, that's good. The teachers finally relaxed. Only the male teacher who had been about to rescue Wang Ling just now looked gloomy. What's wrong, Teacher Li? Hey, I still don't understand. Should I stick out my tongue for CPR? How about we let classmate Wang Ling lie down again and we can study it in depth? Everyone, Wang Ling, there's a limit to joking. Wang Ling is my student, so I'm taking him away. The rest of you, go and take care, classmate Xiaoming. Teacher Pan stood up again at this critical moment. Of course, she knew that this teacher, Li, was actually joking. Teacher Li Rinyong had a habit of making jokes regardless of the occasion. Thus, under Teacher Pan's protection, Wang Ling was taken back to the office. Teacher Pan took out a form from a drawer and gave it to Wang Ling. At the top of the form was Domestic Violence Questionnaire. Wang Ling, classmate Wang Ling, I actually wanted to inform your parents to come to school this time, but I never thought that they wouldn't be worried about your health at all. Teacher Pan sighed, then looked at Wang Ling and said earnestly, tell me honestly, have your parents ever been violent towards you at home? Wang Ling, Teacher Pan, don't be afraid. I'm here. If someone is violent towards you at home, you must be brave enough to say it. Wang Ling wanted to cry, but had no tears. Violence there really wasn't. Father and Mother Wang had been too good to him since he was a child, and practically cherished him in the palm of their hands. Instead, Wang Ling felt a little apologetic for taking such good care of his parents. But Father and Mother Wang indeed had no other choice. Not long after Wang Ling was born, their whole family had moved to such a remote villa in the suburbs so that they wouldn't cause trouble for their neighbors. Think about it. If you were to live with a nuclear bomb in your arms every day, you would probably be on tenterhooks every day. He shook his head. He couldn't possibly say something that didn't exist. Father and Mother Wang were very good to him. It would be even better if Father Wang didn't find an excuse to dock his allowance. Teacher Pan clearly had some misunderstanding about Father and Mother Wang, and it would be fine as long as she made things clear. Wang Ling hadn't expected old Pan to be so concerned about him at the start of the semester. This was a good thing. At the very least, it proved Teacher Pan's sense of responsibility as a teacher of the people. But for Wang Ling, too much concern was trouble. He just wanted to be an ordinary student and finish his high school life peacefully. Classmate Wang Ling, don't be afraid. Cold violence is also violence, Teacher Pan said very seriously. Wang Ling, not good at expressing himself in words, Wang Ling could only lower his head and start to fill in the survey form. He used his superb writing skills for high school exams to express Father and Mother Wang's meticulous care for him since he was a child. There was a pattern to writing for exams, and Wang Ling could analyze and summarize it. He could predict in advance what angle the teacher marking the papers liked to start from. Some were emotional, some were creative, some were elaborate, some were realistic, and some were close to life. Wang Ling had a hunch that Teacher Pan liked to read more emotional things, so he turned this essay attached to the Heartfelt Thoughts column into a chicken soup essay. Thus, Wang Ling's essay was littered with golden sentences. 1. My parents are like candles. They give off a little heat and give off a little light, giving people light and warmth. And I'm like a small flame, so weak that I can be accidentally blown out. Alluding to Father Wang docking my allowance. 2. My father's love is like a heavy mountain and a luxuriant tree, sheltering me from wind and rain. As for me, I'm like a bird in the tree, although sometimes his branches carelessly scrape off my feathers. Alluding to Father Wang docking my allowance. 3. My dearest Dad, we can't be apart for even a moment. Our family is like the 3 auspicious treasures. Although sometimes his love is too binding for me, like the old Lord's immortal binding rope, which puts pressure on me. Alluding to Father Wang docking my allowance. After reading this essay, Teacher Pan's eyes instantly turned red. She almost choked with sobs as she said to Wang Ling, Student Wang Ling, I already know, don't worry. It's getting late, let's go home. Wang Ling didn't know whether Teacher Pan had correctly obtained the information he had provided, but he believed that there shouldn't be any problems. He had already written so emotionally, but he was just secretly ridiculing Father Wang for docking his allowance. But the truth was that not long after Wang Ling returned home, Teacher Pan had taken a photo of his thoughts and sent it to the number 60 High Teachers group chat. No. 60 High Teachers Management Group, Talismans, Teacher Pan, Picture, This was written by Wang Ling from our class. Everyone take a look. P. Teacher Ya. Teacher Pan suspects that student Wang Ling has been subjected to domestic violence. Talismans, Teacher Pan. That's right. So I had him fill out a questionnaire. But from the questionnaire, it doesn't seem that student Wang Ling has been subjected to domestic violence, and even left such a touching essay. I cried when I read it. This child has a grateful heart and knows that it isn't easy for his parents. Unfortunately, this is a private investigation, so I have to help Wang Ling keep this essay a secret. Otherwise, I think it could be displayed publicly. P.E. Teacher Yi. I've finished reading it. It's really well written. History, Teacher Wang. Not bad, not bad. This level of awareness and thinking is indeed a good child. I taught Wang Ling, and he's always been very well behaved in class. No wonder classmate Lotus Sun likes him. School doctor, Xiang Yun. My opinion is different from everyone's. I think student Wang's essay is a hint. All the teachers. School doctor, Xiang Yun. Look, he compares his parents to candles, his father to tree branches, and finally mentions the immortal binding rope. Teacher Yi quickly reacted. You mean wax dripping, whip and bondage? School doctor, Xiang Yun. Facepalm, I never said that. I was just joking at that moment. Teacher Pan, who was staring at the screen, looked nervous again. A hint? Teacher Pan felt that it wasn't impossible. Chapter 1098. Wang Ling would never have thought that his little essay, in which he secretly accused Father Wang of docking his allowance, would actually be shared publicly in a teacher's group, and that it would be forcibly interpreted. In most cases, a lot of people felt helpless when it came to this kind of forced interpretation. But teachers were magical creatures. Language teachers in particular could often extract information from an author's essays that even the original author himself didn't know. For example, a certain sentence repeatedly mentioned a certain adjective, expressing the author's feelings. Maybe it was just that the author didn't have enough ink in his head, which was why he used the same adjective repeatedly. Another example was an exclamation mark at the end of a certain sentence, expressing the author's feelings. The truth was that for an author, the ending symbol at the end of their writing depended purely on their mood. For example, when you read this sentence, you would notice that there was an exclamation mark at the end. But in order to come up with a topic, teachers would always try to figure out the original author's meaning. Unfortunately, Wang Ling had been misunderstood just like that. When Wang Ling got home in the evening, Father Wang left 35 yuan and 68 cents on the table, along with a note. The Yield Department has organized for the author to take his wife to watch the blockbuster movie My Motherland and Me. The money on the table is just enough for you to order a pretty good takeout. Your mom and I have already inspected the shop closest to our house. It's clean and hygienic, and the bento is very nutritious. A nutritious assorted bento costs 35 yuan and 68 cents. Please use this money to order takeout. The corner of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. Father Wang was as stingy as ever. But this was a normal operation, and Wang Ling was already used to it. In fact, there was clearly mobile payment, but it wasn't accurate to the Jiao unit when transferring money, so Father Wang simply put cash on the table in order to use up the family's cash. Under the leadership of the two boss Ma's, mobile payment in Huaxiao Nation had reached its peak. The convenience of mobile payment meant that practically everyone only needed to take their phone with them when they went out. During the new year, thieves who went out to work couldn't even steal wallets and could only steal other people's phones. The problem was that most people nowadays never left their phones. The birth of mobile payment also had a huge impact on pickpockets and other professions. At the same time, many people had gotten used to using mobile payments, and cash had gradually left them behind. Before mobile payments had been so convenient, part of Father Wang's royalties had been sent in envelopes. Thus, over the years, Father Wang had accumulated a lot of cash at home. Father Wang had thought of depositing money in the bank before, but when he thought that it would be very troublesome if he still needed cash in the future, he would have to go to the bank to withdraw it again, so he simply left it all at home. Now, This cash was mainly used for Wang Ling's monthly allowance, as well as for trivial household expenses, such as grocery shopping, express delivery fees, and so on. In addition, Father Wang would sometimes find an excuse to dock Wang Ling's allowance, so he had never been able to use all the cash that had accumulated up until now. He put the money on the table into his pocket and went to his bedroom. Father Wang's study was right across from Wang Ling's bedroom. When he reached the door, Wang Ling noticed a piece of paper on the floor, which Father Wang had probably accidentally dropped when he left. This piece of paper was densely filled with all kinds of analytical data and diagrams. The header was Prenatal Examination Analysis Report. Wang Ling examined the report carefully. Name, Wang Yolan, age, 38, fetal position. During the examination, the fetus was found to be constantly rolling around in the body, and there's a small probability that the umbilical cord will become entangled. A regular follow-up next month is recommended to rule out this risk. Physical condition. Physical condition is good. Pregnant women are in good health due to appropriate exercise and are very suitable for childbirth. Furthermore, because of their experience with natural childbirth, the doctor recommended natural childbirth. Finally, at the end of the report, Wang Ling found that after Mother Wang's prenatal examination last night, the hospital had given her due date of delivery, December 30th. This December 30th wasn't the 30th of next year, and it was next month. This absolutely wasn't because the hospital had used some black technology to force the fetus to mature early in the mother's body, but purely because the nutrition in the cultivation world was too good. In the last few days, Mother Wang had taken a lot of health supplements to protect the fetus and nourish the fetus. Some of them have been bought by her, while others have been given to her by Ajwa and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. These tonics were all priceless elixirs on the market, but Mother Wang ate them all, which directly led to her expected delivery date being brought forward significantly. Plus, the little girl in her womb wasn't easy to deal with to begin with. Even if Mother Wang didn't use these supplements, her due date would still be greatly advanced. In fact, it was very common for the estimated delivery date to be advanced in the cultivation world under normal circumstances. The problem was that it would usually only be advanced by 3 to 5 months. Even the doctors in the hospital were shocked when they saw the forecast report. They were able to see 9 months' worth of time in one go. It was as if this fetus couldn't wait to come into the world. It was growing too fast. It was like the enemy jungler was still farming the first group of wild monsters, while the enemy jungler had already eaten all the wild monsters on the other side, as well as their own, and was directly ahead in experience by a whole 9 levels. Looking at the report, Wang Ling was suddenly very curious about where he had been born. He read from the report that Mother Wang had experience in natural childbirth. That was to say, he had also been born naturally back then. But Wang Ling realized that his memory of it was a little fuzzy. He did remember things very early, but he only had a vague image of himself in his mother's womb. To be exact, he only remembered that he had taken his first breath of fresh air before he started to remember. Out of curiosity, Wang Ling couldn't help but want to see what he had looked like when he had been born. He went to the basement and started to rummage through the images Father Wang had taken with the image bead. Wang Ling remembered what Father Wang had said before. In order to commemorate that moment, he had prepared a long time in advance and had completely recorded Mother Wang's delivery process in the operating room. Using the ability of his king's eye to search the entire basement, Wang Ling finally found the image bead which Father Wang had mentioned. The year and date were engraved on it. It was the year and day of Wang Ling's birth. Injecting spirit energy into the bead, Wang Ling quickly saw Mother Wang's sweaty face in the operating room, as well as Father Wang's snot and tears which gushed out like crazy. At that time, Father Wang had really been too excited. Chapter 1099. More than once, Wang Ling had heard about his birth from Mother Wang. She had said that his birth wasn't much different from an ordinary child's, and that there wasn't much to say, but Wang Ling still didn't quite believe it. This time, Wang Ling watched the video he had recorded back then, and had a general understanding of his own birth. The image bead recorded Father and Mother Wang's slightly immature looks back then. Their faces were still very young, and there weren't many crow's feet left at the corners of Mother Wang's eyes. Whether it was a man or a woman, being in their 30s was actually an age when they were in the prime of their lives and could achieve great things. Wang Ling's heart instantly ached when he saw Mother Wang's sweaty forehead in the image bead. A long time ago, giving birth was like passing through the gates of hell. Now that science and technology had advanced, there were all kinds of methods to smoothly deliver a child. Some people couldn't bear the pain and chose to perform a C-section. In Wang Ling's opinion, Mother Wang was simply a heroine among women. Throughout the delivery process, in addition to the cheers of the nurses on the side, there was also Mother Wang's forceful voice, which seemed to be unexpectedly harmonious. However, after this process lasted for a few minutes, a nurse suddenly exclaimed, "Oh my God, it's out, it's out." Logically speaking, the nurses in the obstetrics and gynecology department had witnessed many births, so they shouldn't be so emotional. However, the scene in front of them made these nurses feel shocked. What happened? Nurse Wang was so tired that she was sweating, but she did feel a sense of relief in her lower body, as if she had been constipated for a long time and the burden on her body was suddenly lifted. She saw the shocked expressions on the faces of the doctors and nurses around her, and became even more curious about the situation in front of her. What the hell is going on? Is it a man or a woman? It's a boy. A nurse calmed herself down and rubbed her eyes. But this child seems to have crawled out on his own. Yes, back then, although Wang Ling had only gained consciousness after taking his first breath of fresh air, the legend of a magical baby who had crawled out of the womb had indeed been left behind in the obstetrics and gynecology hospital back then. It was just that at that time he didn't have a name yet. He actually crawled out of Mother Wang's belly by himself. Even Wang Ling himself was very surprised by this result. After all, his body could indeed reflect the scene of Wang Wan's birth a month later. Who knew how this troublemaking little girl would break out of her shell? After tossing the homework to the two gremlins, he started to look through his WeChat chat history. In fact, since Old Pan had let him go, he hadn't stopped receiving messages. Some had come to warm him up, and some were more concerned about the outcome of the battle between him and Xiaoming. This matter was known by too many people, and it had spread far and wide. It would have a great impact on him for a period of time to come. It was obviously unrealistic to expect time to dilute everything. Moreover, because the video had already spread out, it was unrealistic to visit them one by one to erase their memories. In an online environment, the influence of a video was sometimes difficult to estimate. Not to mention a video, even a sentence, could have a very important impact. For example, the NBA incident that happened recently. Because of the shocking words of a team manager, the entire NBA environment was in turmoil. Then did this MO do it on purpose? Wang Ling felt that this might be a deliberate move by the other party. Because looking at the entire situation, this team manager was the biggest beneficiary. Wouldn't a person with a super high salary, a better understanding of the culture and bottom line of each country, and an extremely high degree consider the consequences of his words in the future? Wang Ling felt that this person's craftiness lay in dragging an entire industry down with him for his own personal benefit, brazenly using freedom of speech as a shield, which was truly comical. It wasn't Wang Ling's place to comment on this. In any case, it was fine to just know that this person was shameless. Back then, the NBA had paid a huge price to open Huaxiao Nation's doors. Now, because of a retarded comment on a social media platform, the NBA had slammed the doors shut. Not only that, the NBA's president had even gone to the trouble of putting a few locks on the doors afterwards. It had to be known that no matter what was missing from the world, it would still go on. It wasn't like you couldn't live without the NBA. Watching volleyball and learning the spirit of the women's volleyball team. Watching table tennis and enjoying a hell level of fancy performance. Wouldn't that be even more carefree? Wang Ling didn't reply to anyone else's messages. Although he had added a lot of people on WeChat, a lot of them had been attracted by his reputation recently. Wang Ling felt that it would be too impolite to refuse them or give them the cold shoulder, so he might as well add them and leave them hanging. Some people would ask for a rebuff and then delete him from their friend list. Wang Ling usually only replied to people he was familiar with on WeChat. For example, the current 4-person group consisting of Super Chun, Dopey Gua, Little Peanut, and himself. How are you going to deal with classmate Lotus Sun's matter? Super Chun asked with concern. For a while at the start of school, Super Chun had also been one of Lotus Sun's pursuers, but later there had been too many people pursuing her, so he had chosen to give up. There were too many competitors, and Super Chun felt that his chances of winning were too low, so he hadn't done much. To Super Chun, working hard for something unseen and illusory was a very stupid thing to do. If he had the time and energy, he would rather spend it on training his muscles. After all, the lines of his muscles would only become clearer the more he trained. I haven't thought about it yet, Wang Ling replied. He knew that he would have to think of a way to deal with this matter sooner or later, and it was likely that there would be another fierce battle tomorrow, that classmate Xiao Ming definitely wouldn't let him off. As for Lotus Sun, Wang Ling still didn't know what on earth this girl was thinking. Although she had confessed to him in reverse, Lotus Sun herself had become the most mysterious one, and until now, she had been hiding at home and refusing to meet him. Tomorrow was Friday, and how this matter would be handled in the end would in fact depend on how Lotus Sun wanted to handle it. And as the focus of this matter, Wang Ling could only go with the flow and take it one step at a time. Friday, November 7th, Huagua Water Curtain Group. A limousine appeared at the gate of number 60 High School, and an old man with a cane and hands full of gold and silver slowly got out of the car. Bodyguards stood in front of him and behind him. "Old man, this is the place," an attendant said to the old man. A lot of people were astonished when they saw the old man's identity. This was the current chairman of Huagua Water Curtain Group, Sun Yiyuan. Chapter 1100. As the topic's heroine, student Lotus Sun still hadn't come to school today. What was unexpected was that instead of student Lotus Sun, her grandfather had actually come. This chairman of Huagua Water Curtain Group was a force to be reckoned with wherever he went. Old Man Sun had acted suddenly this time, and no one had anticipated it. Otherwise, the school gate would have been surrounded by reporters from various major media outlets before the old man had arrived. Old Man Sun hadn't come this time because he had nothing better to do, but because he had indeed come on official business. Number 60 High's renovation was about to start, and he had come to observe the school environment. Logically speaking, there was no need for a big shot at the board of directors to show up for the renovation of the school. It could just be handed over to the engineers under him. So the truth was that everyone in the school had a rough idea of the old man's true purpose. Seeing the old man's limousine stop at the school gate, Super Chin couldn't help crying out just by opening the window. "Damn, Wang Ling, the chairman of Huagua Water Curtain Group, is here. A father-in-law inspecting a son-in-law." Wang Ling almost spat out the chocolate milk in his mouth when he heard this. What did he mean by a father-in-law inspecting a son-in-law? It hadn't been decided yet, right? Besides, Wang Ling himself didn't have much of an opinion. He could only take it one step at a time. Looking out the window, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. The streets around number 60 High had already been cordoned off, and Huagua Water Curtain Group's bodyguards had them all surrounded. Of course, this cordon-off only targeted media reporters and wouldn't affect ordinary people's normal travel. After learning that Sun Yiyuan had arrived at the school gate, Headmaster Chun and Director Shi immediately went to the teachers' offices and had some teachers who weren't too busy come to the school gate to greet him. "Mr. Sun, there's no need to honor us with your presence." At the school gate, Headmaster Chun took the initiative to shake Sun Yiyuan's hand. Old Man Sun returned the handshake symbolically and took a photo with Headmaster Chun. Wang Ling saw this scene from a distance by the window and reckoned that this photo would very likely appear in number 60 High School History Museum one day in the future. Although number 60 High's election as a key city high school was still on the agenda, any school had to acknowledge its historical value. This was a 100-year-old school that was hundreds or even thousands of years old. The combined age of the dozen or so cultivation schools in Peiyuan District could barely compare to number 60 high. I've always been very concerned about the children's learning environment. Coming to number 60 high this time, I realized that it was much better than I had imagined. It was just that it looked a little old, but the moment I stepped through the school gate, I smelled a thick scent of books. It's so nostalgic. Old Man Sun spoke of his feelings as his entourage recorded them in a small notebook. Every teacher who came out to welcome them was beaming with joy. As the chairman of the Huagua Water Curtain Group, Old Master Sun Yuen had met many big shots. His ability to speak was naturally excellent, and it made people feel comfortable like a spring breeze. Although Headmaster Chen couldn't compare to Old Man Sun, he knew that these were just polite words, so he didn't get carried away. Instead, he showed a gratified smile and made an inviting gesture. "Mr. Sun, please take a seat in my office." In the headmaster's office, Headmaster Chun poured a cup of tea for Old Man Sunday. This was the best tea he could offer. Old Man Sun took a whiff of the tea and frowned. Then, he took a symbolic sip and put down the teacup. Then, Old Man Sun said, "Given Rong grades, we could have sent her to a better school back then. But it was Rong's own decision to study at number 60 high, so I didn't stop her." Headmaster Chen nodded. Student Lotus Sun's grades are indeed outstanding. In our number 60 high's history list, her grades are currently in the top 10. After all, she's my granddaughter. It's only natural for her to reach this standard. Old Man Sun was so happy that he couldn't hide the smile on his face at all. But the truth is that number 60 high and my Huagua Water Curtain Group also have a deep connection. Headmaster Chun. Old Man Sun. Back then, there was a river called Beifeng in number 60 high's location. Speaking up to this point, Headmaster Chen immediately understood. There's a river. It's a river from before number 60 high was built. But later, as the climate changed, the riverbed dried up. In the end, this piece of land changed hands several times. First, it was developed into a mausoleum, and then it was reopened to build a school. "That's right, that's it," Old Man Sun said. "Back then, my ancestor used the water of this Beifeng River to successfully refine the first pill. That's why I say that number 60 high is actually fated with us." Headmaster Chun was blank when he heard this. He had never thought that there would be such a secret story between number 60 high and Huagua Water Curtain Group. My ancestor's first pill was refined here. This place can be used as a mausoleum and a school, so there's no need to say more about the feng shui of this land. So after 100 years, I've come here again to help number 60 high with a new construction, so my ancestors' feelings for this land back then haven't been in vain, Old Man Sun said. After a few exchanges, the atmosphere gradually warmed up. Now that the topic had been opened, they could naturally talk about anything. The truth was that Old Man Sun had wanted to ask about Xia Ming and Wang Ling as soon as he entered the school gates. It was just that there had been too many people at the time, and he had been too embarrassed to ask. Now that they were sitting in the headmaster's office and the topic was open, Old Man Sun knew that the time had come to ask. "Well, Headmaster Chen, what do you think about Student Xia and Student Wang?" After laying the groundwork for a long time, Old Man Sun finally picked up the topic he wanted to ask. Headmaster Chun had already known that Old Man Sun was going to ask about this, and naturally had already prepared a script in his heart. "Don't worry, Mr. Sun. Our school will definitely handle this matter impartially and teach Student Xia and Student Wang to focus their limited energy on their studies. It's normal for young people to be impulsive. Student Xia and Student Sun are both forthright people, so it's inevitable. As for Student Wang, he's actually a more introverted child." "He's introverted? So he's from a single-parent family?" Old Man Sun's interest was suddenly piqued when Wang Ling was mentioned. "No, his parents are still alive. It could be that his family environment has influenced his character since he was young. But Student Wang's grades are still very stable." Headmaster Chun wanted to say that Wang Ling was outstanding, but then remembered that Wang Ling's grades seemed to always be above average. Using the word outstanding was a little exaggerated. It was more appropriate to use stable to describe him. But as soon as he said it, Headmaster Chun regretted it a little. He felt that if it was just a matter of getting average grades for a period of time, that might be considered stable. But for a student who could always get average grades, it wasn't too much to describe him as outstanding. Chapter 1101. Headmaster Chun was an honest person, and he had always been modest and cautious. Now that he was facing old Master Sun Iyuan, he felt that he should show even more humility. In fact, Wang Ling was indeed an outstanding student in Headmaster Chen's heart, but he couldn't say it out loud. On the contrary, he would instead talk about Wang Ling's shortcomings and mistakes. So what were Wang Ling's shortcomings and mistakes? Headmaster Chun thought about it carefully for a while. Apart from being too introverted, which couldn't really be considered a shortcoming, he really couldn't find anything to criticize student Wang Ling about. In all the years that number 60 high school had been founded, Headmaster Chun felt that Wang Ling was the first student who had lived such a mediocre life. He had an average score in his exams, stood in the middle of the class queue, and it seemed that Wang Ling's ranking in all the team competitions seemed to be in the middle. According to Headmaster Chun, student Wang Ling is introverted. Does he have friends? Old man's son asked. Of course he does, Headmaster Chun replied. Actually, Headmaster Chun had paid attention to every student's social circle before this. He was more worried that there would be students who couldn't fit in and were isolated in the school environment. Isolated children were more likely to suffer from school violence. And school violence didn't necessarily involve physical violence. Cold violence was also a type of school violence. As headmaster, putting an end to school violence was an unshirkable responsibility. While it was important to teach and educate people, it was equally important to build their souls. He hoped that every student who graduated from number 60 high school would leave in their third year of high school with good memories and not with a shadow in their hearts. Furthermore, they would come back decades later to beat up or report their teachers, saying things like a gentleman's revenge was a dish best served cold. If he has friends, that proves that student Wang Ling has his own special charisma. Old man's son laughed, his impression of Wang Ling becoming a little clearer. Headmaster Chen didn't know what to say and could only smile obsequiously. Previously, our school used to have an admission test system made from the remnant soul of a demon king's primordial spirit. At the start of the first semester, the demon king unexpectedly escaped. Fortunately, our teacher reacted in time and fused the remnant soul with the skeleton of a dog, turning it into a green-furred Akita. Oh, there was such a thing? Old man's son was surprised. Yes, Mr. Sunday. This dog is now at classmate Wang Ling's house. Back then, many of his classmates had said that they couldn't keep a dog at home, but classmate Wang's house just so happened to have plenty of space. In addition, we also think that student Wang Ling is too introverted, so having him help us raise the dogs will also help student Wang Ling deepen his interactions with the other students. Headmaster Chen said. He had said so much, but his meaning was clear. Actually, he was correcting some of his thoughts about old man's son. What he had meant to say was that Wang Ling's ability to make friends actually didn't have much to do with his charisma, but definitely had something to do with the school's educational policies and policies. But obviously, old man's son didn't think so. After listening to the whole story, he couldn't help beaming. Classmate Wang Ling is so introverted, but not only did he make friends, even his dog is willing to live in his house. It really isn't easy. Headmaster Chen, Grandpa's son. Also, this dog's soul is a demon king, right? Principal Chun. That's right. Old man's son asked, since it's a demon king, did it become obedient after turning into a dog? Headmaster Chun. It was very obedient, and now that it's familiar with classmate Wang Ling, it listens to everything he says. When those Shadow Stream killers came to the school previously, classmate Loopy Toad even helped us kill one of them. That's it. Old man's son said, since this dog is being raised at classmate Wang Ling's house, it's enough to prove that his family's education is actually very good. It leads people to do good. Even such a ferocious demon king can be reformed to become so obedient. Don't you think there's a reason for this, Headmaster Chen? After saying this, Headmaster Chun was suddenly speechless. Old Man Sun's analysis was meticulous and almost impeccable. Headmaster Chen didn't even have the time to continue. They had been discussing whether they should visit Wang Ling's house again to see if there had been any signs of domestic violence. But after hearing Old Man Sun's words, Headmaster Chen instantly felt that there really wasn't much of a need to do so. This was a family that could even reform a demon king. How could they use violence against classmate Wang Ling? There was nothing wrong with this logic at all. Furthermore, if there really had been any domestic violence, given Loopy Toad's intelligence, it would have already mentioned it to the students around it. How could there be no response until now? Apart from what you've said, is there anything else related to classmate Wang Ling? Old Man Sun's interest in Wang Ling was growing. Headmaster Chen wiped at his sweat. He didn't want to continue talking about Wang Ling, so he changed the subject. About classmate Xia Ming. Oh, that classmate Xia. I'm not interested. Isn't it just the Ancient Divine Clan? There are also Ancient Divine Clan employees in my group. They're useless. Old Man Sun stroked the cane in his hand, his expression calm and unperturbed. Many people envied the innate advantage of the Ancient Divine Clan spirit root. But if your cultivation talent wasn't good and your realm stagnated for a long time, it wouldn't matter even if you had the Ancient Divine Clan's advantage. After graduation, you would still have to work for someone else. As the chairman of a large corporation, Old Man Sun had more or less seen a few big scenes, so he naturally wouldn't be moved by a mere child from the Ancient Divine Clan. Furthermore, Number 60 High School hadn't been a key city high school when it had enrolled Xiaming back then, and had only been a key district high school. It couldn't be considered a particularly high-ranking school. In Old Man Sun's opinion, a child from the Ancient Divine Clan who got into Number 60 High School wasn't particularly outstanding. Let's talk about classmate Wang Ling, Headmaster Chun. Old Man Sun's eyes lit up at the mention of Wang Ling again. Headmaster Chun could only try to explain Wang Ling's various shortcomings. Classmate Wang Ling's grades have always been in the middle. I suspect his dead fish eyes are distracting him. Oh, you mean his single eyelid. At first, I didn't like it very much, and I even wondered if I should pay for classmate Wang Ling to have a double eyelid. Later, I heard from my assistant that our Rong liked this style. Now, I'm used to it. This single eyelid looks lifeless, but it actually has a special kind of deterrent and gives people a sense of security. Old Man Sun analyzed. Headmaster Chen. Also, as far as I know, classmate Wang Ling also likes to eat snacks, for example. Crispy noodle snacks. Old Man Sun nodded. Crispy noodle snacks are good. Eating snacks shows that he has a child's heart, and crispy noodle snacks can collect cards. Classmate Wang Ling is definitely collecting them. This collecting ability just proves that classmate Wang Ling has a pretty good sense of financial management and can collect money. For a moment, Headmaster Chun was speechless. All the good things have been said by this Old Man Sun. Chapter 11:02. He didn't know if it was because he and Wang Ling hit it off in his heart, or because his granddaughter Rong liked him. But as Old Man Sun listened to Headmaster Chun, he frantically analyzed the situation in his heart. At the same time, the more he listened, the more satisfied he became with Wang Ling. Although it wasn't to the point of marriage, Sun Yiyuan at least felt that Wang Ling was someone she could date. Of course, Sun Yiyuan himself couldn't guarantee anything when it came to feelings. He felt that even if Wang Ling and Lotus Sun couldn't really get together in the end, it would probably be great if they could still be friends. In contrast, he really wasn't interested in Xiaming at all. In fact, it could be said that he was rather disgusted by him. What right did this person have to interfere when his granddaughter had decided to date him? Furthermore, he had especially challenged Wang Ling to a one-on-one fight, and instead of succeeding, he had been injured all over. How could such a person protect his granddaughter? Old Man Sun held the cane in his hand, his mind full of thoughts. Although he wasn't satisfied with Xiaming, he couldn't show it directly, so Sun Yiyuan took a deep breath and asked, "Where's classmate Xiaming?" "He's still in the hospital." "Is it serious?" "It's all right. Our group will pay for the medical expenses. Sunny Yuan said. How can I do that? It doesn't matter. It's decided then. Old Man Sun was resolute, and Headmaster Chun was naturally helpless. The chairman's style of doing things had always been one to keep his word. Of course, apart from medical fees, Old Man Sun also had his own plans. After Headmaster Chun asked about Xiaoming's situation, Old Man Sun quickly made a call in his office to Huawu Water Curtain Group's finance department. He didn't shy away from putting the phone on speaker in his office, and Headmaster Chun, who was on the side, could hear their conversation. Is it little Zhang from the finance department? Yes, Chairman. I'm Zhang Jia. What can I do for you? Go to Peiyuan District City Hospital's trauma department right away and look for a patient called Xiao Ming, room 207. Yes, Chairman. What do I want? Bring the legal staff and talk to him. Ask him how much money he wants to leave my granddaughter. Hearing this, Headmaster Chun took a deep breath. Wasn't this a cliché scene that would appear in all novels? It could be said that this wave of dialogue came quite unexpectedly, and Headmaster Chun was directly stunned. However, their conversation did not end there. Chairman, let me be a little nosy. Is this classmate Xiao Ming the one from yesterday's live stream? You also know? I only heard about it, Sunny Yuan frowned. The impact of this matter was indeed very bad. Logically speaking, the people in the finance department should be too busy to pay attention to this kind of thing. In the absence of other work assignments, they had to work overtime to complete the accounting. Even the people in the finance department knew about it, which made Old Master Sun a little unhappy. The impact of this matter was indeed beyond his imagination, mainly because it was not good for his granddaughter's reputation. After yesterday's live broadcast, he had already spent a large amount of money to smooth over the media, so that the media would disappear without a trace and not report too much about it. But now that he had cleared the channels with the mainstream media, it might not be so easy to stop those online marketing accounts that were trying to leech traffic. Where did the person who told you the news get it from? It was in the company's internal chat group. The impact of this matter actually isn't as big as you think, Chairman. Also, I took a look on Weibo before, and those videos have all been deleted and cleaned up, the finance department employee said. Cleaned up? Who did it? Wang Ming did it. Old Master Sun was blank. He definitely didn't have the ability to do it himself, and he hadn't spent money to hire someone to do it. Forget it. It was a good thing that it hadn't spread through the online channels. Before you go to the hospital later, go through the chat group and see who is so nosy. Tell them to come to the finance department to settle the bill and get the hell out. Yes, Chairman. Little Zhang shivered on the other end of the phone. Then about classmate Xiao Ming's compensation, do as you see fit. Don't report it to me if it's less than 10 million, Old Master Sun said. Yes, I'll do it right away. The call was over. In fact, Sunny Yuan even felt that Xiao Ming wasn't worth 10 million at all. But in order to ensure the success of the matter, an appropriate amount of money was necessary. Putting down the phone, Old Master Sun stared at Headmaster Chun and smiled. I've embarrassed myself in front of you, Headmaster. You're too kind. Headmaster Chun was also shivering like the finance department staff on the other end. I want to ask Mr. Sun, is this how you deal with every person who confesses to classmate Lotus Sun? Giving money is the most direct way. Of course, it's mainly because this matter has blown up too much. I'm afraid that this classmate Xiao won't accept it and will have other thoughts about Rongrong. Most people know when to back off and don't dare harbor any unrealistic thoughts. There's no need to give money to those kinds of people, Sunny Yuan said. Money was like a fleeting cloud to him. It wasn't a big deal at all. I heard that the body technique exchange meet in Peiyuan District is about to start. Classmate Wang Ling, will he be participating? Old Master Sun asked at that moment, changing the subject. The list of names hasn't been officially decided yet, Headmaster Chen replied. He wasn't trying to shirk responsibility, but that it really hadn't been decided yet. Headmaster Chun was still conflicted about the 10-member delegation, because the truth was that there were only 5 participants, and the remaining 5 were substitutes. As the main force, the transfer students who had just enrolled this semester were very strong. But they had just enrolled, after all, and Headmaster Chun felt that it wasn't particularly good to directly send them out as the main force. So the list of the main force hadn't been decided yet. Previously, he hadn't stopped the duel between Xia Ming and Wang Ling because he wanted to figure out which one of them would be better to send as the main force. In the end, after Old Master Sun spoke this time, Headmaster Chen immediately knew what to do. He continued, "But although the list hasn't been confirmed yet, classmate Wang Ling has already been confirmed as the main force. He could be considered to have defeated classmate Xia Ming in yesterday's duel. Regardless of whether it's luck or strength, it's an undeniable fact." A wise decision. Hearing Headmaster Chen's words, Sunny Yuan was immediately happy. He got up and shook hands with Headmaster Chen. Number 60 High is truly fortunate to have such a wise headmaster like you. As an old man, it was clear that Old Master Sun didn't know that the word wise had already been distorted in modern culture. Headmaster Chun was quite familiar with young people's culture, and when he heard this word for the first time, he thought it was an insult. Chapter 1103. That afternoon, at the friendly suggestion of Sunny Yuan, Old Man Sun, Headmaster Chen swiftly compiled a list of names and put it up on number 60 high school bulletin board. There were 5 people on the starting list: Fang Xing, Jiang Bai, Lotus Sun, Super Chun, and Wang Ling. 5 substitutes: Gu Xuanji, Lu Qingyi, Zhen Yuan, Hiro Gua, Li Yuwei, and Xiaoming. Wang Ling knew most of these people, and they were practically all on his side. The only one he wasn't familiar with was Li Yuwei, who was in the same class as Fang Xing. She was the class monitor of Elite Class 2, and her grades were pretty good. As for Xiaoming, Wang Ling could be considered to have gotten to know him through a fight. If it had been before the duel, a lot of people might have questioned this list. Xiaoming's grades were so outstanding, so why should he be Wang Ling's substitute? But after the duel last night, no one said anything. Even if there were some who wanted to stand up for Xiaoming, they could only swallow their words. Their skills were inferior. Who could they blame? In short, there was no way this matter would end well in the afternoon. Xiaoming saw the message in the class group chat at the hospital, and he was so angry that his bones, which had just gotten better, almost broke. His starting position had been snatched away, and Xiaoming's heart was gradually filled with dark emotions. Wang Ling, I'll remember you. Being forced to be a starter wasn't good news for Wang Ling, because it went against the Wang family's motto of keeping a low profile. Wang Ling had thought that after nearly half a year of torment, life in grade 1 might become a little more comfortable. He had never expected that not long after school started, all kinds of major events would happen one after another, attracting countless people's attention. Life was unpredictable. Fortunately, Father Wang had been concerned about the issue of his second child recently, and didn't have much free time to pay attention to Wang Ling. Otherwise, he would have to find an excuse to dock Wang Ling's pocket money again. In the evening, Wang Ming's remote projection appeared in Wang Ling's room once again. This was a method of using the Heavenly E-satellite to project spirit power into a magic treasure, and turning a virtual image of a part of the body into a physical one. Wang Ming had already mastered it very well. Previously, he had only been able to turn his hands into a physical projection, but now he could turn most of his body into a physical one, just like when the real person came to Wang Ling's room. I've already blocked all the news that could be blocked, so do you want to thank me? After learning about the duel between Wang Ling and Xiaoming, Wang Ming immediately reacted by using his own technology to block a lot of videos and comments online. As long as a keyword was involved, it would be rejected with the excuse of the internet is not smooth. Many people were just interested in some events for fun. After failing repeatedly, they would naturally give up. As it turned out, Wang Ming's guess was absolutely correct. Wang Ming had already applied for a patent on this technique, and felt that it could be used to solve some network management problems. Although the internet had implemented a real name system, there were always people who liked to find a sense of existence on the internet to vent their emotions. They thought that others couldn't see them through the screen, so they started to make up random comments and talk nonsense. A lot of online violence happens like this. Perhaps some people thought that scolding was nothing, but if tens of thousands of people thought the same, then it would be enough to form an army, and it would cause great damage to the hearts of many people. At birth, man is good by nature, but sometimes it must be said that it is difficult to guess man's evil intentions. Someone once said, "When an avalanche comes, not a single snowflake is innocent." The hearts of people who had been subjected to all kinds of online violence for many years were already extremely fragile. As time went by, the violent words sent in the next second might be the straw that broke the camel's back. This also explained why some celebrities suffered from depression. They were clearly very young, but gave up on themselves when they were in the prime of their lives and had a grand future ahead of them. After experiencing cyber violence for a long time, the color of the world they saw gradually change from colorful colors to grayish-black. In the end, this grayish-black became their final portrait in the world. Of course, Wang Ling didn't think that his heart was that fragile. Although he was still young, Father and Mother Wang had raised him to be a Buddhist, and he had long since seen through the world of mortals. He didn't care what other people scolded him or what they thought of him, but he also didn't want his affairs to be discussed in public. After all, he was just an ordinary kid who was still in school, not a public figure. It was a little unfair for him to be exposed to the public like this. So it had to be said that Wang Ming's handling of the matter had been very timely. Wang Ling watched as Wang Ming lay down on his bed very naturally, and even took off his socks as he stretched like a cat in a comfortable nest. Wang Ling was silent for a moment, but didn't say anything. Today, he would make an exception. Dealing with online public opinion was as easy as lifting a finger for Wang Ming. Wang Ling knew that Wang Ming hadn't specifically asked him to look for him just to take credit. "Looks like there's a result for Bai Yuquan," Wang Ling said telepathically as he stared at Wang Ming. "Sure enough, you guessed it." Wang Ming smiled. "You told me before that this guy has faded Dao and holds the memories of all kinds of worlds. So when we search him, we found that his memories were particularly chaotic. Thus, Ajua entrusted our research institute with a thorough screening of this guy's memories. To be honest, this result was a little unexpected. Wang Ling, we found another you in his memories," Wang Ming said solemnly as he sat up cross-legged. Back then, Wang Ming had already had a premonition. He still remembered the white-haired Wang Ling he had seen in his dream, who looked exactly like Wang Ling. Even his dead fish eyes were deeply etched into wood. That was the person who had resurrected Devil Gut Fungus Lord and the current president of the foreign underworld Force Knight Chief, Bai Zhe. Devil Gut Fungus Lord's whereabouts were currently unknown, but President Bai had made a series of moves after his resurrection. For example, Bai Yuquan was a character President Bai had pushed out after his resurrection. Although Bai Yuquan was President Bai's son in name, in Wang Ming's view, rather than a son, it was better to call him a pawn. Because from beginning to end, neither President Bai nor Devil Gut Fungus Lord had shown up. Although President Bai had already made a move, the truth was that Bai Yuquan had been the one to do all the public appearances. After their resurrection, it was as if these two people whom Wang Ling had personally dealt with before had become completely different people. They had changed their usual aggressiveness and were operating behind the scenes. And now, it could be said that the source had been found. The source was 100% that white-haired Wang Ling. But while this white-haired person looked like Wang Ling, Wang Ming had yet to thoroughly investigate their relationship. Chapter 1104. Wang Ming had no way of knowing who this white hair was and how he was related to Wang Ling, since he didn't have enough clues. But the truth was that Wang Ling already had a rough idea of what it was, but that was just his own speculation. Fate Dao was a special kind of great Dao, which he had learned from Bai Yuquan. Although it was very complicated, it wasn't as difficult as Wang Ling had imagined when it came to actually learning it. After mastering Fate Dao, Wang Ling had a completely new understanding of the three timelines, the past, the present, and the future, as well as the world lines. He could mobilize power from any world line. But the fate Dao that Wang Ling mastered was in fact different from other people's. His world lines were all under his control, and the stories that happened in the other world lines could only be considered his clones. No matter what kind of personality the clones in the other world had or what happened to them, they couldn't possibly rebel against the original Wang Ling. This was the ability that Wang Ling had after mastering the ultimate meaning of Fate Dao, and Bai Yuquan had only scratched the surface. So Wang Ling had thought of a hypothesis about Whitehair's identity, assuming that this Whitehair was a clone that had left his original world before he had mastered Fate Dao. Everything actually made sense, but Wang Ling felt that this Whitehair wasn't as powerful as he had imagined. If he was really so powerful, why didn't he directly destroy the world? After coming to this world, he resurrected his mortal enemy and organized the Black Shadow Army. What was the point of doing all these fancy things? It was nothing more than an unknown grand plan hidden behind all this. Even though these were just Wang Ling's speculations at this stage, given that Wang Ming had provided him with a small number of clues to support them, there was a high possibility that they were right. The more Wang Ling thought about it, the more reasonable this explanation seemed, because so far, he hadn't found any trace of Whitehair. There was nothing on this earth that Wang Ling couldn't find. But if this person had come from another Earth in another world line, it actually made sense that he couldn't find him. After all, every world line had a different story happening at every moment, and the laws and times of the world itself were also completely different. Their current world used spirit chi, so other worlds might also use battle chi, horse chi, immortal chi, and so on as a natural energy source in place of spirit chi. Wang Ling couldn't sleep that night. Xiao Ming, who was lying in the hospital, couldn't sleep either. This was the standard temperament of a young man. Xiao Ming had always been unconvinced by the outcome of his duel with Wang Ling, and felt that Wang Ling had defeated him purely by luck. But he really couldn't figure out what kind of body movement Wang Ling was using. Why was it that every punch he threw actually turned around and landed on his own body? Why was it that he was always the one who got hurt in the fight? He kept saying that he wouldn't let Wang Ling off, but in fact, he wasn't thinking of anything too malicious. He just wanted to find a suitable opportunity to fight Wang Ling again. Fair and just sparring in private. Not for Lotus Sun. It was all for the sake of fighting for a bit of pride. After lying in the hospital for a while, Xiao Ming felt that he had calmed down a little. In the afternoon, Treasurer Zhang of Huagua Water Curtain Group came to look for him as a representative, asking him to name a price to leave Lotus Sunday. Xiao Ming thought that Huagua Water Curtain Group might have misunderstood him, and he refused the treasurer's request on the spot. However, he also agreed that he wouldn't harass Lotus Sun in public again, and that everything from now on would be based on the principle of fair competition. While in the hospital, Xiao Ming thought about it for a long time. The biggest reason why Lotus Sun looked down on him was probably because he wasn't outstanding enough. If he was outstanding enough, perhaps everything would become smoother. At that moment, Xiao Ming tossed and turned on the hospital bed. He only had one thought in his mind, and that was to get better from his injuries as soon as possible so that he could resume his normal school life as soon as possible. Then he would study hard, study Wang Ling's fighting style, and give him a good beating. But it was already 2 in the morning, and Xiao Ming still didn't feel the slightest bit tired. He stared at the ceiling, deep in thought. At that moment, the door to the ward suddenly opened. Xiao Ming thought that it was a nurse making rounds, so he closed his eyes slightly and ignored her. A very untimely male voice rang out. It was very low, but magnetic. Xiao Ming, descendant of the ancient divine clan, how are you? It clearly wasn't the female nurse's voice. Xiao Ming thought it was someone else who had come to visit him, and his tone was clearly impatient. He turned his body halfway to the side, one hand already on the call bell, and he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the visitor. Big brother, it's already midnight. Why don't you look at the time? Who would come to visit a patient in the middle of the night? This person was either a lunatic or a psychopath. I advise you to keep your little tricks to yourself, classmate Xiao Ming. Otherwise, I can't guarantee the safety of the little nurse who comes here. When that voice rang out, Xiao Ming saw a dark shadow as thin as a gossamer grip his hand. In a split second, he actually couldn't move. He felt pressure on his body, as if he was being bound by an indescribable force. It was like being held down by a ghost. He couldn't move, but his consciousness was extremely clear. He could sense that the shadow was talking to him. "Who on earth are you?" At that moment, Xiaoming already realized that the other party hadn't come with good intentions. It definitely wasn't here to visit him, but was clearly looking for him. "I'm Nightmare." The shadow smiled. "I'm everyone's nightmare." "What do you mean?" Xiaoming was puzzled. "You don't need to know what it means, but I can tell you that I'm here to help you fulfill your wish." The mysterious shadow's voice came again. "Do you know what your greatest failure was in the duel?" "Power," Xiaoming replied. "That's right. You're indeed too weak." The shadow smiled. "So, I can help you become stronger, classmate Xiaoming." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Xiaoming asked. "The ancient divine clan has a unique physique, and your physique is actually one of a kind in the ancient divine clan. With your constitution, you can absorb the power of an entire underground heavenly vein. As long as you can absorb the power of that heavenly vein, defeating that classmate Wong will be a piece of cake. So, do you want to become stronger? Let's do a sex trade." Chapter 1105. What do you want me to do? At that moment, Xiao Ming couldn't move at all. He was a little frightened. This mystical power was pressing down on him, tormenting his mind to the limit. It was a very torturous feeling, and it was as if this person's name was Nightmare. He was in a nightmare. It was very common for people to struggle in a nightmare, and Xiao Ming's mood was even more so at that moment. He just wanted to escape this nightmare as soon as possible. After lying in the hospital for a day, it had taken him a lot of effort to calm down, but the appearance of this man called Nightmare threw his train of thought into disarray once again. The National High School Body Technique Exchange Conference is coming up, and the venue this time is the prestigious Nine Dragon Mountain. Student Xia, you only have one task, and that is to find an opportunity to climb to the top of Nine Dragon Mountain. After you reach the top, I'll give you other directions, said Nightmare. National? Isn't it held in our district? Xia Ming was astonished. Plans can't keep up with changes. Student Xia, you'll know the specifics tomorrow. I hope you won't stand me up. Of course, in order to prove that I have the ability to make you stronger, I'll give you a small gift first. After the man called Nightmare said that, Xiao Ming instantly felt the pressure on his body loosen. After the man called King of Nightmares said that, Xiao Ming felt the pressure that had been binding him instantly loosen. It was like the pleasure of suddenly being released after being imprisoned for a long time, and the comfortable feeling of having to pee for a long time before being released. Very quickly, Xiao Ming woke up. At that moment, he was astonished to find that his body actually didn't hurt at all. The man called Nightmare had completed his task. He didn't have a true form, and was just a black shadow that came and went without a trace at an extremely fast speed. In Songhai City, Nightmare appeared in a completely abandoned factory. Through an iron door, he replied to the person inside. The initial work has been completed. Well done. As expected of the Dark Network's first leader 300 years ago. The person inside the door said, without the ancient divine clan as the key, the main veins valve will never open. I already don't have the patience to keep waiting. I can only give it my all. It's all thanks to Sir, Nightmare replied respectfully. He had been resurrected by this white-haired Sir inside the door. Although he didn't know what kind of methods this lord had used, he was completely convinced by the people in the sect. 300 years ago, he was the #1 ranker in the Dark Network. If it wasn't for his death, the ultimate killer king who had been captured wouldn't have become the #1 ranker. But now, Nightmare Lord did not expect that he would actually come back to life after sleeping for so long. It was like a dream. Back then, Xie Sanshao wasn't killed by Zhuo Budong's team, but died after he failed to absorb his main meridian. When Zhuo Budong found him, he just picked up a loophole. Inside the door, White Hair laughed. Picked up a loophole. So that's how it is? This wasn't a secret among the higher-ups back then. Furthermore, it was people from the International Cultivation Alliance who suggested it. They went to great lengths to issue the first Alliance-level Heavenly Tao bounty order in order to hunt down the Darknet's #1 wanted criminal. They mobilized hundreds of thousands of cultivators from all over the world. But in the end, C.S. Sanshao died because of his own fault. What do you think public opinion will think about this matter if it gets out? Nightmare was silent. He had never thought that there would actually be such a story behind what happened back then. Back then, C.S. Sanshao self-destructed because he couldn't absorb the power of his main meridian. Zhuo Budong's team happened to be nearby and picked up the pieces in passing. Furthermore, this descendant of Zhuo Budong was also one of the organizers of the National High School Body Technique Exchange Conference this time. Who was it? Xia Sanshao's real name was Xia Sanshao, and Zhuo Budong's real name naturally wasn't Zhuo Budong. Although Zhuo Budong became famous in one battle back then and won the International Cultivation Alliance's first-class medal for meritorious service, he didn't want to soar too quickly to avoid making people jealous. He hurriedly applied to change his name so that the people who knew about this back then would bury this secret in their hearts. Even now, Zhuo Budong's descendants don't know that their ancestor actually had such meritorious service back then. The person inside the door, who knew everything, laughed softly at that moment. Thus, he changed his name from Zhuo to Zhuo. His descendants now all have the surname Zhuo. Currently, the most famous descendant is Odd Zhuo. That you're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.